Alright, hello and welcome to episode 18 of Hardcore Gaming 101's Game Club 1990X podcast, where we play a new game each month without FAQs, save states, or shame. April 2013's game was Home Improvement for the SNES, and with me to discuss it are...
Joseph Josar from the forums.
This is Xerxes from all the other podcasts.
Except the ones where you were silent,
Yeah.
pretty much.
We're still getting some echoing. I think it might be your end.
Yeah, we're getting that echo.
Let's see here. Okay.
Am I echoing now? I'm echoing again.
I don't know whose side it's coming from, but
Is it mine?
I think it might be because you're the only one that's not echoing, Joe Star.
We are off to a great start.
Well, okay, so I'm Snarbu, obviously. I'm the host. Xerxes and Joestar have introduced themselves. Who else hasn't introduced themselves yet?
Used has.
Bruce here, creator of the More Power Edition hack.
And we've got Sotinga, our writer, kind of waiting on the sidelines. He could chime in at any moment. It's been a long time since he's been on there, so...
Oh wait, you're actually inviting me to speak on this one?
Yeah.
If you
Should
want
give me a
to.
moment. I need to set up something in the
crap.
emulator. It's capturing the mouse. 'Cause that is no good. I haven't used ZSNES in forever. Let's see here. Is it UI
Alright.
options? Show mouse shadow. Trap mouse cursor. That's not on though. Let's see.
Snarp, I find the way that you actually pronounce acronyms to be quite charming.
ZSNES. Well, I normally don't say
CSNES
SNES.
and then GUI.
GUI. Yeah.
And Mega Fusion?
GUI. Let's see here. Well, I don't know why it's capturing the mouse, but maybe I can... Well, if I alt-tab it, I'll alt-tab to something else, so... Anyway,
Okay.
does everybody know what time it is? April Fool time! This game was picked
April
as the
Fool
result of a
time.
prank on Horribly Right. So, what was the rationale behind this, Xerxes?
Well, it was April Fool's, and last year we had everybody vote on very real-sounding fake games. My favorite being Cyclodyne, but which I think won, right? Didn't Cyclodyne win?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
fine,
was the
Cyclodyne.
Caravan 2012 shmup of Hudson Soft's stable.
Yeah. So this time we thought we'd do it again, where everybody would assume it was a joke because we would. What we did is we put a bunch of weird or terrible games into the randomizer instead of our usual stable of weird or interesting but terrible but kind of good games. And then we the joke would be that everybody would vote on it assuming it was not for real, and then we'd actually end up playing the one that won. And unfortunately that worked, and we ended up playing Home Improvement.
Gone
Which
horribly
is-
right.
I don't know about that. I don't think so, Tim. So that was the idea behind this. So the games were, I think the other games were Minnesota Fats Pool Legend for Genesis and Saturn, and Knight Rider for any. I don't think there's one good Knight Rider game, so it didn't really matter.
You said the NES one initially. I don't think the Commodore 64
I think the NES one, and we would have played the Commodore one as well, which is
There's also a
even worse.
Turbo Graphics Knight Rider game that looks even more like Outrun, I think.
My favorite thing about Knight Rider for the NES is that your car apparently is like a monster truck because it takes up the entire road. It's like if you look at the screen, like the dashboard of your car is huge. Anyway,
Michael, do my fenders look fat? Oh, wait, sorry.
You look at these licensed games and you have to wonder, did at any point in their development, did the developers, the programmers, management, whoever, step back, take a look at what they've created and ask themselves, does this look anything like the property on which we're basing this game? And if they
Yeah,
have,
Yeah, they did. They just released it anyway because they hate us.
Personally, I think they were blinded by their eyes transforming into cartoon dollar signs. They weren't able to see how terrible it was.
Well, remember, I mean, they've got to do these things fast. And also remember the way licenses work is they paid for that license to make a game on this. So it's not like there's some kind of natural impulse to make them terrible. It's like it's just they're a way of they're an investment. Like you make a game that you know is going to sell no matter what, and or that you hope is going to sell no matter what, and then you put it out, and usually it's the ones since they know it's going to sell no matter what. I'm guessing that's why they end up getting rushed, and they usually aren't that good. Is because it doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to spread by word of mouth. It's going to sell because it's got Tim Allen on the cover.
Yeah, pretty much.
In the 90s.
Should we talk about actually that the license on which this game is based? Because, well, Home Improvement is based on a popular 90s sitcom starring comedian Tim Allen, best known to today's youngins as the voice of Buzz Lightyear.
Nice segue. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, we should talk about the show this is based on. It is based on a TV show. The kind of idea of the Home Improvement show, it was as many 90s and beyond, as many sitcoms are, they're based on the Starz stand-up comedy act. And Tim Allen's shtick was like basically that men are cavemen wearing Dockers, and we don't read instructions, we never ask for directions, and yeah, and then I don't know how much I don't honestly know much about his stand-up act, but I've heard it was pretty ribald. Anyway, this got translated into a show where like the guy was like the man's man, kind of. Tim Allen plays Tim Taylor, who is the host of a home, like kind of like a handyman type show called Tool Time, that is sponsored by a fake tool company. I believe it was Binford. So Binford would be like your Craftsman or Black & Decker of this alternate universe.
The same one Toy Story exists in, by the way. You take a close look at some of the crates in Sid's house.
Oh, that's right.
And they're actually Binford
yeah.
tools.
There are Binford tools in there. So there you go. Canon. Anyway, so the idea is that on the show, it's, the name is a pun, of course, or the double meaning being it's about a show about, working around your house, do it yourself, home improvement, but also about how the main character, Tim, learns to, improve his husband and father skills, usually with the advice of his mysterious neighbor, Wilson, who is always only seen from behind a fence from his, kind of like the top of his nose up to his, and up. You never see his mouth or the rest of his body. That was a pretty good gag. Okay, we're getting the echo again.
How you doing?
Test, things by dry.
There's something going on Joestar's end. I have no idea what
I'm pretty sure it's mine. I'm gonna go hook up another mic, I think.
Okay. All right. That is really weird. He said he was using a headset. I actually have a quick question for you guys here. How many of us in this call right now actually grew up watching the show? Because this was actually a large part of my childhood, at least in grade school and parts of middle school, was just watching the show when I got home and, pretty much watching it every day. I think at that point it was in syndication when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a weird confession to make. I remember this show. I used to love this show. I remember almost nothing from this show.
Yeah, I don't remember anything either.
The exact same applies to me as well. I watched it all the time, as I recall, in grade and up to middle school. And the only moment that stands out to me was when Tim held some sort of singing contest on Tool Time, and these two rappers started to get insulting him, and then he told them off by saying, "You dissed the boss, that means you lost." But that's the only gag I've been able to salvage from my brain.
I can remember some of the bizarre, like, visual gags or, like, power tool gags that, Tim pulled on his family, like that ice cream scoop that's, like, super heated, and it just bores a hole into the frozen block of ice cream. There was a couple other, too.
That kind of thing would actually be pretty handy, as long as you could keep it from burning down your house.
Well, yeah, the idea was that Tim would always create these, or usually he would never get the. I'm just gonna roll with it. He wouldn't just get like a riding lawnmower. He would get this banned in 20 states kind of like assault mower that would end up ripping his pants off and setting the house on fire or something. Anyway, I mean, I loved the show when I was a kid.
Mythbuster.
Yeah. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I love the whole shtick of the show. I was a kid. It was one of the few shows on TV that both me and my dad could laugh at. So, although it's kind of, we're kind of snobby about it now. I thought it was pretty funny, and I haven't seen it for over a decade, but it probably still is pretty funny. I mean, it's just the whole joke about this men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of era gender baiting humor is very, very passe now. I would hope. But it used to be not that long ago, really. It's every dad you saw in a TV commercial was an incompetent boob that couldn't do anything right and didn't know how to change a diaper and that kind of crap.
Yeah, Married with Children as a parallel example.
Yeah. The show, I mean, Home Improvement is actually a lot kind of a very sanitized, less cynical.
Yeah, it's a lot less mean-spirited.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're done talking about that.
Hey, double checking. Am I echoing now or?
No, you sound great.
There's no echoing at all. Okay, you sound good too.
Okay, great.
Actually, Xerxes, I hate to linger on the subject for too long, but Pamela Anderson.
Oh yeah,
she was a tool-time chick.
Yeah, there was a
tool-time girl. I'm sorry, that's what they prefer to be called.
Hostess.
Tool-time professional woman hostess.
Yeah, basically, the TV show within the TV show, the Tool Time show was always introduced by some, scantily clad, hot pants, Hooters waitress, who would, say, "Does anyone know what time it is?" And she would also later on come out and show off the tools. And for the first couple of years, it was Pamela Anderson. And then later on, it was some other interchangeable.
Her name was Heidi on the show. I don't know the actress's
actual name. Yeah, Heidi's the one I remember. Heidi's the one I remember. I don't remember actually watching the show when Pam Anderson was on it. But anyway, this was we've mentioned it. We're done.
Yep.
Okay.
Moving on.
Let's start. Maybe we should start playing the game.
Alrighty then. So I should note this is a hacked up, more powerful version of Home Improvement that Ryu Sui worked on. And I can tell you right now that this game plays amazingly better just from a few minor changes. Particularly the controls. That's probably the best part of this hack so far.
Well, we should talk about that later. Because I want to get more into the reason why people hate this game so much. And let's look at we're all looking at a script, by the way, that unlike our normal script, which is very, very much written out for us by Stenga, this one, he wrote about it, and then because we were having trouble reading it while watching the game, I just kind of cut it down. So everybody's looking at this, hopefully looking at the same piece of paper, or digital piece of paper.
It's the one that doesn't read like a snippet from Ulysses, basically.
A very Amy. Wow, I never found that secret.
Yeah, I never found that.
Me neither. Holy crap!
I don't think I cared enough to.
No, me neither.
Well, I
Second
found a
off,
lot of
yes.
secrets and stupid things in here. There's still stuff I can't figure out how to get to. Oh crap, there
So
is
we
one
just-
secret I just missed, actually. Ow.
Well,
Go all my
let's talk
bolts.
about who made this game.
Second awkward
Um,
confession of the evening. I have never played the game past just right up ahead. I think it's like the second crate in the stage. I only played just far enough to make sure that my hacks were working, and that's it.
That's their
Good.
dedication to craft.
That's probably more than anyone.
Actually, I'm really glad you did that. That's actually very cool because
Well, I'll tell you.
this game,
Yeah.
it's not. It's yeah. I actually didn't make it past like 1-3 because I just there's life. I could go to work and I could mow my lawn and I could practice putting punji sticks under my fingernails. There's a lot of things that would just we'll get into it more, but mostly it's just this game gets really boring because like the enemies are like bullet sponges from H beep. What do we got to do? Which words do we have to filter?
If you can say it on like Beavis and Butthead, I guess for old people, I don't know what the equivalent would be now. Like just for the like, if anybody's ever wondered why we don't why we censor the podcast, it's because I think it makes us sound dumber, or actually it makes us sound as dumb as we actually are. Which
I like the censorship sounds. And,
I think it's funny. I'm a big fan of
yeah, it's a
Arrested
lot funnier,
Development. Yeah. I really love Arrested Development. I'm sad that the new episodes are not going to be censored because I always thought that was the funniest.
Whoa, wait,
Alright.
they're still actually going ahead for the episode. Oh, we'll talk about that later. That's not
Yeah. So let's talk about who made this game really fast because this is interesting. A
Well,
lot
this
of
is
people didn't
Absolute
know.
Entertainment, which was it headed up? Was it headed up by, or was David Curry just a member of it? Like, I'm not entirely sure what his reasoning for being in that
he
company
started
is.
it because basically he was like, "Screw y'all!" At Activision. They kind of, I can't remember. Did they give him the boot or anyway? He decided he had enough of them and he left. Started Absolute.
Went on to make games like this.
Yeah.
Activision being evil, more things changed, more they stayed the same, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, it was
I
EA
think
that was
kinda
evil,
like-
then Activision split off from there, and then a bunch of companies split off from Activision. Oh, God. Oh,
Actually,
God,
can
no.
I insert a brief biography for the young timers about David Crane?
Yes, please do.
He is the guy responsible for creating Pitfall for the Atari 2600, often considered one of the finest games for that system, and pretty much one of the precursors to modern platformers as we know them today. You might know
What?
this is that game that sounds like Rainer.
Sotega?
Yeah,
Sotega.
yeah, Jojo.
I thought you said this was for young people. You have to explain to them what a Atari 2600 is.
Oh, it's the
Allow
thingy
me.
that came before. Actually, sir, you want to handle that?
Yeah, the Atari 2600 was the
Is
first
the reason I
popular-
didn't have friends as a kid because I was the only one who didn't have a Nintendo. So there you go.
It's one of the reasons you didn't have friends as a kid.
Yeah, the other reason is I'm white and everybody hates me.
Okay. Whew. All right.
Oh, I'm just saying, I hate white people.
All right.
I don't
all
blame
right.
them. I don't blame
I
the
just
other
hate
white-
them.
Yeah, I just hate white people.
I don't care about making money. I just love to sell guns.
Oh my god.
Beef
You-
what is
I
that
don't
a
like-
reference to now? That sounds...
You would never,
Don's
ever know.
Guns. Yeah,
Don's
you'll-
Guns was a gun
Don's
store.
I saw him at a steak restaurant one time. I was like, oh my god, I just like saw a celebrity.
He used to drive around. But by the way, everybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, JoJo and I both grew up in the greater Indianapolis area, and Don's Guns was like a popular gun store, and that's the only reason for this reference. But
That's amazing.
it was basically Don lived in southern Indianapolis, I think, and I believe he drove a Corvette for most of the time he lived there, and he had some like I can't remember what his vanity plate was, but anyway, you'd see him driving around and you knew it was him. And there was something just like, he was like the Colonel Sanders of firearms. He was really an impressive guy. Anyway, And that was his commercial. He'd be like, I don't care about making money. I just love to sell guns. And then while he did that fake laugh, he would do like the gun motion with both of his fingers, like he was shooting you.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This is a great, beautiful country. The so the Atari 2600, right? I don't know who would be listening to this that doesn't know what this is, but it was like the first super popular video game console. Everybody knows it for like video game combat and a lot of other Atari classics. Pitfall was made by David Crane. It was one of the first games he made right after splitting off. He worked for Atari for a while, and then all the talented people who worked for Atari left in unison and formed Activision. And they were really good at what they did. They were really good at squeezing out the amazing stuff out of this incredibly primitive machine. And really, Pitfall, like I don't remember what it was like when Pitfall was new. I'm not that old, but it was it's a really impressive game. And if you probably heard of it, but if you haven't played it, you should give it a shot. And this game, I believe, Home Improvement feels a lot like, kind of in a way, like what Pitfall would be if you just kind of took it to its logical conclusion.
The more power edition of Pitfall, huh?
Yeah,
Sorta,
we'll get into it. I mean, that's
There's also
reasonable
Pitfall: The
men can
Mayan
differ,
Adventure,
but-
which is very similar to this game. Just throw that one out there.
That's
Definitely from the
thinking.
sprite standpoint, yeah.
Should we mention anything about Pitfall 2, also from the 2600 era? 'Cause
Pitfall 2 is awesome. I
I
think
personally
enough
really
said,
like that game a lot. It was like one of the
yeah.
very few 2600 games to actually have running music on it, whereas most of the others just got by on silence alongside
Yeah.
beeps and boops.
It's also like it was Metroid before Metroid existed, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah, exactly.
really notable. Anyway, Absolute Entertainment, yeah. So David Crane also made A Boy and His Blob,
Yes.
which is that's probably his second biggest hit.
This is
And,
Swan
Is there a
um,
remake of that?
Yeah, there is actually,
Oh,
and it
was
has a
there-
dedicated hug button.
Yeah, that's
I wonder if
that's
David Crane had
great.
any involvement with that.
He didn't, but David Crane is he's a big shot guy now because he's got, I'm sure, all kinds of money from founding Activision and to a lesser extent, I think his association with Absolute, and he did a great, he did a great, what's it called?
Heroes Base.
he actually- Yeah, he did. He has an iPhone app, right, that tells you how they made Atari games. It's incredible. It's based in part on the book Racing the Beam, which, if you like books about incredibly arcane technology, is a fantastic read. And if you don't like books about arcane technology, it is probably going to be really boring. But I love it. It's like one of the best video game books I've ever read.
So, question: who here knows what Racing the Beam actually refers to?
Racing the Beam refers to the way that the Atari 2600 did not have a graphics processor. There was no so the way that it and you can correct me, 'cause I'm sure you know more about this than I do, Bruce, but I believe Racing the Beam refers to the way that everything had to be timed down to the draw cycles on the
Right.
lines on a CRT,
The system
old-
had no built-in VRAM, so like you say, they had to build the game program had to draw each frame at every scan line. I mean, it
Right.
basically had to draw the screen one scan line at a time, and that had to be timed to the refresh.
Right. And that's why a lot of Atari 2600 games have these huge, like, blank areas on the horizontal or vertical, or sometimes both areas of the screen, because those were areas of the game, basically, where you could write code that wasn't going to be visible, and it would have time to check everything, like what time, what it'll update the timer. It will, check for whether if you're playing an adventure game, whether you have the item, the key item or not, stuff like that. And it does that before it starts drawing the next parts of the screen. the animations basically, and it's really awesome. Like I don't totally understand it, but it's fascinating. Anyway, David Crane was a genius. He's a genius. He's a really good game designer, and he apparently had a big hand in designing or creating this game. He may have even worked on some of the code. We don't know. And there was another guy. What was it? Was it Kitchener or?
I forget.
Yeah, David Kitchen. Or
Kitchen, yeah.
Gary Kitchen, the guy who made Ghoul School.
I was going to call him Dennis Kitchen, but that's a comic artist.
There's another famous guy who worked.
Gary Kitchen. Gary Kitchen. Thank you.
And I'll let somebody else talk once we're done. You know, my old man expertise is like coming in handy at this point. But I'll let JoJo take over. Dude, JoJo, what else do you know about Absolute?
Goes really well with orange juice, and they have a lot of billboards. You know, I'm trying to think of some of the
historic
other
landmark
games.
with surprisingly clean bathrooms.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the other games that they worked on, but they were actually one of the few third-party developers for the Atari 7800. I remember that from my horrific childhood in Indianapolis, but I'm trying to think.
They did the Rocky and Bullwinkle game, I think, actually. They've done a bunch of licensed titles, and
Did,
the
you
Rocky
know,
and
and-
Bullwinkle game. Oh, man.
I
You
know
think
they
this is
did.
bad?
They also did Bart
no.
versus the Space Mutants, which I grew up on.
Oh, that's right. That would be the other one I was trying to think of.
Not great
crap,
either.
what the hell just hit me?
but
God damn it.
Bart versus the World
Oh,
was
sorry.
even worse.
So
That one had some of the most nightmarish jump puzzles of all time. I mean, that was just a ridiculous game.
yeah,
and
were all of Absolute's games like super difficult?
I think, for the most part, yes. I mean, the guy made Pitfall, so that should tell you everything you need to know.
I think they
Pitfall
actually
is
did
doable.
I'm trying to think, but I think they did a Pete Rose baseball game, which unfortunately didn't have a gambling mini game in it because they didn't have mini games back then. But that's another thing that the little kids won't get, because basically Pete Rose was like, do people even care about baseball anymore? But anyway, he was like a really popular baseball player, and he got busted for like betting on baseball, and it's kind of like, why? I mean, like, who
But
cares?
he was betting like that his own team would win, though, right?
Yeah, I think it was like, okay. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not
he
like
didn't-
it was,
he never
yeah,
bet against his team. Like he wasn't throwing games; he was just betting on them.
yeah.
But because betting on baseball is verboten since the Black Sox scandal of 1919 or something, 19 whatever. It's
Serious
he was
business.
like so Pete Rose. Long story short, Pete Rose is one of the greatest baseball players of all time, but he will never be in the Hall of Fame because he gambled on the sport. Moving on. So Absolute Entertainment
Yeah,
made a
but,
bunch of
you know, you
licensed
have to-
games. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna like throw in a passive aggressive.
Was it his
I'll
nickname
go
Charlie
for it.
Hustle? Was
Yeah, I
his
believe
nickname
so.
Charlie Hustle? And he played for the Reds, right? And their nickname at that time was the Big Red Machine, which was an awesome sports nickname. Almost as good as the Big Unit for Randy
I'm
Johnson.
not going to touch either of those. Yeah, I'm trying to be good. This is a live podcast, so you guys can't censor my usual stuff. So
Yeah.
Jump back to Absolute. They also made one of the most infamous titles in anything ever. Activision's Ghostbusters, which everyone knows best for its NES port as being a horrible train wreck. Although I remember the Sega Master System port was slightly more palpable, but still.
hey, try playing through the Atari 2600 version. That didn't even have the final area. It ended after you got past the Marshmallow Man, so you didn't have to do the part
the
where you
staircase?
climb the. Yeah. You didn't have the staircase. You didn't have the part where you fought Gozer. So
You couldn't
I
fight
love
Gozer the
those stories.
Gozerian?
no, I know it was like ridiculous. And the other thing is, you only had one chance to go to the store, so you couldn't get stuff and then get more money. So there's really no point to the getting more money later on, because basically you only had one chance to go to the store, and that was when you were starting the game.
Wait, Lance Boyle just in the chat just corrected us. He said that
He did Ghostbusters too, apparently.
they did Ghostbusters 2, although David Crane himself worked on the original Ghostbusters.
Was
That's what he
David
says.
Crane like assaulted by like a jump, like some kind of jumping puzzle? Because I mean, it seems like he's trying to work out some issues. Because there's a lot of jumping issues in this. Pitfall is basically one big jumping puzzle. We were talking about Bart versus the Space Mutants, which is basically, I mean, it's sort of like, I mean, I gave a lot of crap to this, but you know what? At least this has some artistic values to it. Bart versus the Space Mutants is a massive pile of crap, and it's a terrible game because, like kids, when you're, back then, I mean, it was like a little 10-year-old and stuff, and I'm like, oh man, the Simpsons, it's awesome, they're making a game, and it's like, you can't get past I could get past the third level, but, I couldn't get past that dinosaur in the museum, but I have no idea what they were expecting, like, if they were expecting even adults to be able to play through that game. It's ridiculous.
I could never even beat the first level because I couldn't find everything purple that you had to paint.
Yeah, me neither. I was at the same problem.
Would anyone believe I actually played the game for several weeks and actually beat it once? That was probably a bit of a waste.
Yeah, I believe it. You beat Holy Diver too, so
That one was certainly less of a waste, even though it was equally as agonizing.
I was going to say at least Holy Diver.
We haven't talked about, by the way, this is I guess the crash course portion of the show. We don't.
Should we cue the sound effects?
I'd say this is the crash course.
Yeah, somebody has to do the Rad Racer timeout at the end. So, I mean, so anyway, this game is really hard, and although it shames me to see Snarby play it, because he's so much better at it than I am. I cannot do this. What he's doing is...
I couldn't do this without the revised control scheme, because half of what I'm doing is just being able to actually hit all the buttons at once, pretty much, like a speedrunner would be able to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that. I was playing this game, I was playing the hack on a flash cartridge on my SNES, so it's I was playing it on the real thing with the better controls, and I still suck at this game. I was just playing it last night, and I just went to bed in disgust.
Yeah, I remember that. You were like, what the hell is
difficult.
wrong with this game?
I was very, very angry. I got about this far, and that was it. I got a little bit farther once before, but I've never gotten past World 1 ever again.
To be fair, it doesn't really pull any impressive stunts past this, and
it just gets harder and progressively harder and just more labyrinthine. And
I mean, I'll give the game this. It's not one of those games that's just hard no matter what. It's if you keep playing the game, you will learn the tricks and you will be able to execute them every time pretty much perfectly. It's not like it's a game that's just impossible because some random elements that you can't control. It's really difficult because the only way you can get anywhere in the game is by learning what stuff that what Snarby just did, where he crawled up underneath the dinosaur and just killed it from beneath where he couldn't get hurt. It's cheap little things like that. It's the only way to succeed in this game. You always feel like you're doing things the wrong way, but that's the only way to do it.
That's
Everything in this
almost
game is about... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's very European because, it's like playing a Psygnosis game or a game by Ocean.
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, but we just played Electro Man, and I found Electro Man. I thought that was going to be one of the hardest games to play this year, and it's nothing compared to this, at least for me.
Well, it had unlimited continues, and you restarted on the spot. It's very similar to a lot of modern Flash platformers, especially in terms of the difficulty curve. It's basically I Want to Be the Guy, Super Meat Boy, any of those things, if you're familiar with those. A decade or two before those were in vogue. And it wasn't made as a joke either, or as a test of skill. It was just hard.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Star,
they just...
why don't you explain what makes this game so hard? The mechanics of it that make it so difficult.
Okay, so...
Because I can't do that without, risking an aneurysm.
Well, there are two reasons that make this game much more difficult than any other game. 2, you're on one, you're on a time limit. Okay, most games have time limits. I meant notoriously retro hard game Castlevania, or any of the Castlevania games, really, that entire series, are noted for their difficulty, and part of that is because I believe you're timed. But the difference here is that the clock ticks down extremely quickly. Like, Ryusui, like, one of the first things he changed was making the timer slower, just so you didn't time out. The second problem, like, you know, the timer by itself, you know, not a huge deal. A lot of games had that back then. I mean, even, like, Sonic the Hedgehog did, and Mario does. But the other thing is that the levels all consist of scavenger hunts. You're constantly looking for these crates, and you need to get at first 5 of them, and then 6, and then 7, and so on. And the game just barely gives you enough time to find all of them. Like, this might be hard to believe, but I think the default amount of time in a stage is roughly 10 minutes. And that's still never enough time. Like, it's not even close to being enough time. There's some other issues, too, like enemies take way too many hits to die. Most of the weapons are really bad or just very inconvenient to use. Like the dynamite here, it's actually slightly worse in this hack because of some trick they did with the way that the controls for it worked. You're supposed to be able to hold it down to throw it further, and I'm not saying it's Ryusui's fault or anything, but it only works on a diagonal now. You can only throw it further if you're like aiming up and to the right or left.
To be fair, the dynamite already.
Yeah,
was
it
the
already
worst
sucks.
weapon,
Like
so.
that just accentuates
the
why
torch.
it's so bad. It's just it's just so hard to hit anything with it. It doesn't do enough damage, and it's everywhere. Like, most enemies drop that. Like, you might have noticed this, but like in the first couple levels, like most of the enemies, all they dropped in terms of like weapons was the dynamite.
I would say it's like getting the dagger when you had like the triple shot holy water in Castlevania, but at least that was the sub weapon. Here, it's all you get.
Yeah, and the other thing to note about this game is that it has Sonic-style health, and, you know, that's actually kind of a cool health system. I always thought that was kind of clever, that you turn the main collectible into sort of a health item, so it has a double purpose. Here, though, because enemies are so numerous and they take so many hits to die, you're going to get hit. And then they all spew out of you at, like, completely random, bizarre angles and speed off, like, at the speed of light, so you can barely recollect them. There are power-ups, though, like the mushroom in Mario Brothers that makes you more powerful, the power-up, or more power, whatever that little thing is called. That lets you walk on spikes. But as soon as you get hit, it goes flying out of you, and you've got, like, less than half a second to jump and pick it back up. I mean, that is kind of cool. You can pick up a power-up after you get hit, you know, if it gets knocked out of you, but the amount of time you have to pick it up is just so narrow, and it's the same for the bolts right there. You just noticed I got hit. I had to hoof it to be able to collect them all again. And here's another situation too that really sucks. They'll put you in a very narrow hallway with an enemy that takes forever to die, and there is no way to dodge it. There's no way to get under it to attack it or anything. You're just kind of boned. Yeah, it just the designers know what the weaknesses of their engine are and what the weaknesses of the game are, because they constantly put you into these sort of situations where you're going to get hit. Something they do later on in the game, at least by the third world, is they'll have you in this extremely narrow hallway where you can't jump because there are spikes on the ceiling, and then they'll put those little enemies on the ground, you know, those little ants that you can only hit by, you know, using the jackhammer on them. And anytime you do that, anytime you hit an enemy with the jackhammer, especially the smaller ones, you get knocked up. So imagine what happens. You're in this narrow hallway, and you have to use the jackhammer to kill these things, but it knocks you up, so you're just going to get launched into the spikes, and then it's...
Game design 101. What a bunch of effing.
Well, you don't
I
have
was
to
gonna
use the
make a joke
jackhammer.
about that.
You don't have to. No, you can shoot them. There are other ways you
Or
can
you
kill
can
them.
use your sledgehammer, right? The sledgehammer.
I don't know.
weapon.
I think I've tried that, and it doesn't actually hit them. But I might be wrong on that. No, it does not. I don't think it does. Okay, I think this is the last crate, so yeah. So I won't be able to get an extra life here, but the next stage is the boss, and it's insulting how easy the bosses are in this game. Like, they are just really lame. Except for the final boss, apparently. I actually stopped at the fourth world because I decided, you know, if I'm going to play this through, I'm going to play it through legitimately. You know, using Ryusui's hack, because it's made the game playable. At least I have infinite continue, so even if the controls hadn't been changed, even if there were still other outstanding issues, I have that at least. But now that
Yeah,
the controls are
Jason.
fixed, so what? What?
No.
Sorry, I didn't
No,
hear you.
Jason's my
so
bro.
we're gonna. So
No, it's all
Ryusui, for those who weren't following the thread and didn't understand what we were talking about earlier, Ryusui is on this podcast not just because he's a nice guy, but because he hacked the game for us because we were having so much difficulty playing it. When you don't have save states, it's really difficult to play this game because after I think like 3 continues, you
3 or
lose.
4,
You
yeah.
have to start back at the very beginning of the game, and the game is really hard, especially when you're just learning a stage. So even though we always have to start at the beginning when we start the game, at least you can keep playing and hopefully get somewhere. We made a list of requests and asked that anyone who knew how to hack SNES ROMs to try to do some of them, and he did. And what he was able to do is he gave us an extra life, right?
Yeah,
What
to
else did
begin
you
with.
do? He had
I
probably
also
explained this.
I also slowed down the timer and reconfigured the control scheme. That last one was actually pretty tricky. I mean, there's a certain way to go about it, but the way that the controls are implemented, I mean, that glitch you mentioned about the dynamite being worthless, even more worthless now, that is my oversight, and I apologize profusely for it. But
That's no big deal.
yeah, basically, like I said, the way the Super NES works, there's a register, a memory value that the game reads in order to determine which buttons are being pressed. Now, what I can do is I can check for when that memory value is being read and then see what it does with the value afterwards.
Now, Ryusi, when you say you can check and look at the difference, what can you explain to everyone what you're looking at? Why can't you just read normal code? What are you actually looking at?
Well, technically, I am reading the game's code at the same time, but the first step here, if there's anybody here who's got a programming background, the principle is pretty much the same. What I do is I set a read breakpoint for that memory value. A breakpoint basically means that the debugger stops the program's execution when a condition occurs. In this case, that will be when the memory value is being read. Afterwards, it pauses the game's execution at the exact line of code where that memory value is being read. So I can follow the code or trace it afterwards, or basically I can search for other memory values as well, but it's basically a puzzle to solve, in other words.
But when you edit it, you're editing like basically hex entries, right? You're doing, it's like hex editing, just like a game genie would, right?
Yes.
You can,
yes. All the changes I made to the game are things you could have done. You could do with a simple head setter, but in this case, I opted not to use a head setter, and rather instead, perhaps an over-engineered solution, as it were. But instead, I set up an assembly file assembler. So basically a piece of program code that contains all the hacks, which is then compiled into the ROM.
So you're basically rewriting the entire code of the game, essentially, after you debug it.
Well, not the entire code. The assembly code still makes only the changes that I would make with a headset, but it automates them effectively. It automates the process. So instead of having to redo everything or undo something if I made a mistake, instead what I do, the process is, it starts off with a clean ROM, it then creates a copy of that ROM or something of that nature. I'm a little fuzzy as to the exact details of how the compiling, linking process goes, but the end result is that what I end up with is the original ROM and a copy of the ROM with my changes baked into it. And
That's interesting. I wonder if that resulted in what I tried to do is I just for fun, after I gave up seriously trying to beat the game, I took it and plugged it into a real Game Genie and checked whether it would work, and it doesn't work at all. It's as if nothing's happening. The Game Genie doesn't do anything. So
because of the nature of the flash cartridge? Or does it
I
work
don't
with
think so, because I also tried the flash cartridge. Comes with a built-in Game Genie 2 that you can try, and I tried it on that, and it had the same non-result. So believe it or not, I goof around with this stuff a lot, and I was really curious. I was like, I wonder what would happen if I did that, since he's already changed it, whether it would do something crazy. And it didn't do anything crazy. It just acted like nothing. It didn't have any effect at all. It was kind of funny, because it's like your people complained about us like hacking the game to make it easier, or in this case, I think it's not just to make it easier, to make it more fun, or to make it fun at all. And yeah, we did that, and we're probably not going to do it again. And this is a special situation. But anyway, the hack itself forces you to keep it real, because you can't. It actually disables the Game Genie codes that are out there. So
I wonder why that would be the case.
I don't know either. I was just curious whether you might have known, but suck on that, haters. So,
hey, now.
No, I mean, there was some controversy, if you want to call it that, in the thread, and nobody was being a jerk about it or anything. It was just kind of funny, because some people responded by saying, well, like, you can't, break your own rules. I don't see how this is different from save stating, which is an interesting point, but completely wrong, because it's totally different from save stating. It's like,
well, you still have to beat the game, and you've made it easier, but it doesn't change the overall nature of the game.
The rules of the game.
What we've
like
done
the save stating.
What we've done is make the game more playable in the end. I mean,
That's
all we've
right.
done is correct the most glaring oversights, the control scheme, the ridiculous limitations on lives and continues, and the...
And
Yeah,
it only makes the game a little bit easier. It doesn't make the game very easy at all. It just makes it a slightly less infuriating. So anyway, but the other group of people were saying, like, well, this is our point. Like, you've got to give up the whole, like, no save states, no FAQs thing, because it's just holding you back. And I disagree with that strongly as well. Not just because I came up with these arbitrary rules, but because they're not entirely arbitrary. If everybody's playing with save states or with their own...
what's the point?
Yeah, personal hacks. It's like you're not doing it as a community. You're just doing it by yourself, and you don't need anyone's help to get through the game. You can just do it on your own, just like, save scumming frame by frame if you want to.
I don't think this game even has an FAQ, so you can't, even if that was an option, we wouldn't have it.
It wouldn't help you anyway. Yeah, that's right. It's like this game is immune to explanation or instruction.
Can I make a confession about the liberties I took for this game? Before the hack was made, I actually deigned to beat this game with the use of save states, but on my own rules that I would only put a save state at the beginning of any given stage, and that if I died, I'd start over. But I scrapped that latter rule in the fourth and final world because they were getting lengthy and ridiculous. But I still didn't put any save states in the actual middle of levels. So I don't know if that's considered cheating. I just wanted to get that out there. This is before the hack was finalized, though. And
Look. I mean, these rules are. This is not a serious thing. We're not doing like.
That's exactly.
People can do whatever they want. It's just like the idea of using the thread to get through the game, difficult games, is that rather than consulting a perfect stranger on the internet, somebody that's already written out for you, or rather than save scumming your way through a game and just not, just basically sodomizing the game's like rules and characteristics. You can. Nobody called me out on that, huh? So, but you can. You would go through through some kind of community effort, like like kids getting together on a playground back in the day when that was the only way you could get hints, and some of the hints would not be that helpful because the person doesn't know how to explain it very well. But somebody else would translate for you, and somebody else would draw you a picture or a map, and. That's the idea. So that's like, but if you really want to play a game and you want to see the whole game and you get frustrated, it's like, nobody cares, and we're not going to call the cops. You don't even have to tell us about it. And Satanga, I expect him to do whatever it takes to get through the game because he writes the scripts and he has to know what happens in them. So, it's like me, I don't finish half the games we play because I don't cheat, but, I'm not that determined either. Like in a game like this, I just frankly
It is
You take
really,
one look at it, and
Yeah, I have actually beaten it. I can tell you that it is definitely not worth the effort. But if Saru doesn't get to the end before we're over, I can't actually tell you who took Tim's tools.
Was
If
it
you'd
the
like.
tool thief? The dreaded
No.
tool
Tool-
thief.
The Hamburglar?
No.
Rabble, rabble.
The Biscuit Dough Hands man. I did it.
Wilson.
I-
Wilson, but
No.
I would laugh if it was Wilson. It's like, for all those years you've just never taken my advice, blah, 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 etc., etc.
Okay, who was
Hello,
it?
neighbor.
Do you guys? We'll take a vote. Who's in favor of me just spoiling it now?
Well, you might as well.
wait.
It's
I'm not
pretty
going
much
to
the
play
end of
this
the
game
month.
ever again.
It was
so
Atlas
please
all
do.
along. Atlas, I tell you. Would you
I was pretty
kindly
mad,
retrieve the
yes.
tools?
Alright. Actually, Lance in the chat is correct. Tim's three sons stole the tools with the final note saying, "We knew you could do it, Dad, so they were just testing him all along."
Testing
That
him,
is so
like,
lame.
Okay,
Were they
here's
trying
there's
to
one
kill
huge
their
plot
dad?
hole with that whole twist. How in the hell did the kids make it through these stages and not be horribly maimed and die?
Yeah, there's the thing. They're trying to kill their own dad, for feck's sake.
Do they hire
Well-
somebody? Do they hire like Samus or something? Because that's about the only person that could navigate these stages and not die horribly.
My potential theory is that maybe Al could have helped them, or maybe they had like some clout with the bigwigs of the other studio. No, that doesn't make sense.
Okay,
I don't.
We're overthinking
Let me
this. Let's just say
explain.
it's
Okay, so-
dumb. Let's just leave
is.
it at
That's-
that.
So,
The end.
I still say it was Atlas all along.
Was
Tim Taylor.
was Randy the
Tim
fat
Taylor
one?
is-
Um,
none of them were fat.
wait,
I don't know. One of them was kind of porky. I was gonna say he probably just like kind of rolled through this one. Then
It's like the
Randy
older one.
was Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
There's Brad Renfro. Jonathan Taylor Thomas was the middle child. Brad Renfro was the oldest child, right?
Wait, I don't think that was Brad Renfro, actually.
It wasn't.
Well, hang on.
It doesn't really
Just
matter
gonna run
that
out
much.
before I can
But
kill that snake.
anyway, the middle child was Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who became midway through the show's run like a major teen idol of the '90s, like all the Tiger Beats and Teen Beats and Dippity Bops and Boobity Boops
Yeah.
had JTT on them.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor Thomas was the middle child. Randy, Zachary Ty Bryan was Brad, the oldest, and Tara Noah Smith was the youngest. Mark. Now, why the heck do they all have three names? That's what I want to know.
these are serial killers.
John Wilkes Booth. Well, actually, what is the explanation for that anyway? Why they always use all three names for a serial killer?
It's
Because it makes
it's
it sound weird.
I guess
sedition marker by the CIA. They train these people to do that so that they can keep an eye on them.
either that or they're just all coincidentally fans of Anthony Michael Hall. I don't know.
John Wayne.
At the time,
Gacy.
your car stereo was stolen by that guy who happened to be named Anthony Michael Hall. The No, I mean I think they do that for serial killers because it makes them sound weirder and creepier, and it may even be tied back to John Wilkes Booth or some other like proto murderer in Western history. So like if you can't give them a catchy nickname like Jack the Ripper or something, like if you know who they
Yeah,
are,
it's
they
three
have
names.
to.
I think we're going off on a bizarre orbit tangent. Just
Well,
so
it's
we're-
related to the game that we're
Yes.
playing, so I'm perfectly fine with this tangent.
Well,
That's normal though. We always do this. It always gets edited out. This
This
is the
is
first time we're
Yep,
This is the point where I say something racist and
something meta racist, not literally.
yeah, not actually racist. I just am making fun of my in-laws. So
A lot of like Eminem style.
yeah, I'm
Jokes.
you
I'm a-
mean the rapper, not the candy?
Do you know any? Okay, do you know any of those pieces of candy that crack like pseudo racist jokes? Not pseudo,
I
but
don't-
you know
Well,
what I mean.
You know what's funny? The yellow.
Yes, he was voiced by the guy
right.
from Oz.
Yeah, so he's like,
Wait.
"What do you want, you preg?" It'd be like, cracking all sorts of things. It's like, I'm not gonna sit with that hoe. The There's the brown M&M. She's the sassy sister M&M.
Oh,
And I mean, they went there. They went there. So, but yeah, like that's the thing. It was good old. Oh, geez, I'm forgetting his name. Good actor. Jeez.
he's done a
J.K.
lot of voice
Simmons?
acting, I think.
J.G. Simmons, yes.
J.K. Simmons was the yellow M&M?
Yeah,
Holy
you didn't
Yeah.
know that?
What?
No!
Wait, what? What?
I don't know what they're talking about either.
J. Jonah Jameson from the Spider-Man movies. He did the voice of the yellow M&M on those commercials.
I
Does anybody
first
remember when they had that contest where they had to introduce a new M&M color? And
Yes.
it turned out to be blue.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
And
And it's
they-
Billy West as the red M&M. That's Fry as. Oh, my head's about to explode.
Oh, you didn't realize that?
I first noticed J.K. Simmons when he was Chief Pope on what's his face on The Closer, and then it was like, oh my God, this guy's been in everything, and I never noticed.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. I like him
Yeah,
best
but
as
that's-
J. Jonah
that's the thing.
Jameson, though.
Yeah,
Cave
he was
Johnson.
great as.
Cave
See,
Johnson.
one of the few good things about the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon is that he reprised his role as
J. Jonah
J.
Jameson.
Jonah Jameson. Yeah.
And now I'm having horrible visions of Tim Taylor in the Aperture Science Laboratories.
Well, maybe this is what this is. Maybe this is all just an elaborate
Okay,
test.
yeah. Did we even talk about
This
the
was a
plot yet?
triumph.
No, outside of the
Wait.
fact of who stole Tim's tools.
Oops.
What?
We blew the ending without talking. My bad. Well,
Yeah, somebody stole his tools, and Tim feels like less of a man without them, so he has to go and take care of it.
You know, he could have just gotten a
Really?
Really,
subscription.
daughter from a parallel universe.
You know, he could have just gotten a prescription for Cialis if, you know, someone stealing his tools was that much of a problem for him.
yeah, it's like
You know,
it's
Home Improvement seems like the kind of show that could have done an episode about male enhancement drugs if they, like, they didn't. They could have done it. It's not like it would have been too far outside their wheelhouse. I mean, their whole idea was like male inadequacy and failure. Like it was what the show was about. It's like men are just
Chauvinistic,
Neanderthals.
ruthless.
Yeah, and you have to like train them to be like even passably human. That was the purpose of the show. I mean, that was what the humor was based on. And I don't say that to criticize it because that was like a very popular theme and it resonated with a lot of people. I thought it was hilarious. I still think it's kind of funny, but not in the same way. And just because, you know, it's like over time, this kind of joke gets really old and I wouldn't say offensive, but it's kind of like in the 70s, you'd always have like the jive talking black guy show up. That was like in the 90s, you'd always have like the incompetent dad who like failed at everything and, you know, somehow managed to like duct tape a semblance of a life for his family together by the end of it.
The Simpsons even had
Okay.
that was a central point of The Simpsons as well, because Homer is
Well, The
definitely that
Simpsons-
archetype.
Yeah, I mean, The Simpsons was like very, and Married with Children to a lesser extent, but it was like those were very like everybody looked bad in those shows, and they were, I mean, they were shocking it to people at the time, not because they were offensive or like super offensive compared to anything else. It was just because they were so cynical, and they're, you know, Home Improvement was not one of those shows. It was very much a mainstream kind of thing, and it was
I do
funny, but
believe
it
that
wasn't
Tim Taylor has
challenging.
I do believe that Tim Taylor has somehow managed to duct tape the Moonlight Sword from the Armored Core series to his chainsaw.
Armored Core.
Armored Core, before From Software did Demon Souls and Dark Souls and got famous, they did a game about giant
No,
robots.
dude,
called
no,
Armored
I'm just
Core.
saying though, like that's
And
that was actually a reference to another game. Neo Roz is gonna slap you, dude.
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause it was
failed
in,
to mention Kingsfield.
Kingsfield, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know old now that the Moonlight Sword is from Kingsfield, but whenever I think of blade, that kind of effect there, I think of the Moonlight Sword from Armored Core first and foremost. I mean, I know it's a
they're
deliberate
both
reference.
from software games. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, from.
Nobody's played these games. So, in the chat,
Yeah, I saw that. Dr. Allosaurus actually mentioned that.
Says there is an episode of Home Improvement where Tim literally gets neutered.
I hope he got him back. What was the context of this?
The
Well, it
second
doesn't
game,
really.
actually,
No,
I never
he-
watched. I don't remember watching
He got
the
a.
episode.
He got a. Well, that's different.
A vasectomy.
Like if you're neutered, you are basically like the purpose of doing that is not to sterilize you per se. It would be to
So you get
pacify
chemical-
you.
Yeah, did he get chemically castrated or?
I don't know how this worked in this.
Because I know there was I know there was an episode of Seinfeld where they got vasectomies, and
Yeah.
it was like,
Well, they all like kind of in that episode they all kind of decide to get vasectomies, and then when they see like Kramer come out of the operating room, which is hilarious because who would just come out of an operating room? They like all panic and run.
Yeah, because he's walking so stiffly.
Yeah.
so why do they call it tying your tubes? I had mine cut.
Yeah. So anyway, so the premise of the game is that Binford Tools has come out with a new line of incredibly unnecessarily powerful hardware in Tim's honor and perhaps likeness. I'm not exactly sure.
They look
And,
like Rob Liefeld guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
They look like something Cable would have. Yeah.
Thank goodness we could bring that back into this conversation.
I know.
There was
It's
some
been too
sort of
long since
tangent
the-
I wanted to go on related 90s comics in this, but I can't remember what that is. Oh, that was a mean trick.
For
Ow,
those
ow, ow.
who need more 90s comics, please download the Blackthorn podcast. It's super. So somebody steals his tools and they scatter them throughout the back lot of the television station where they filmed the fictitious Tool Time show. And Tim decides he's going to go find them himself, despite the fact that apparently, although they're just filming TV shows about dinosaurs, they have real dinosaurs there, and so on.
You could just animatronics. I mean, they drop bolts. You kill them.
Yeah, but
really like pissed off animatronics.
well,
like,
some of these things spit. There's actual ghosts that you fight that are incorporeal. Like I think just Tim just had some very, very potent brownies before the show started, or before the game starts. In any case,
Well, he was arrested for possession, like, before he became a stand-up comedian, so, you know, it was probably, like, an
I
acid.
mean, that was
attack.
1983. Like, who wasn't arrested?
Oh, come on,
for
acid
possession?
stays with you forever.
I was 18 months old and I was arrested for possession.
Can I say something
the-
about video game archetypes here?
Yes,
It's like
please do.
because the show, because this game has him under the pretense of going around to these different movie or film sets to retrieve his tools, but that just allows the developers to bring in the most painfully generic and boring types of levels that you've seen in like every video game ever. Because first we have Prehistoric World, then we have Egypt World, and then after this is Haunted House World, and after that is Space World.
so
And-
Tenga, you
Disney
missed the
World.
best part of what is it, Egypt World? Is that it's called the Temple of Tools.
I admit that's
Yes.
that and the Pharaoh with like the large wrench
So-
or jackhammer holding.
So it's a fertility shrine.
I should talk about that because when I saw him entering the place of that Apis the Pyramid, I immediately thought of the Temple of the Sun and Moon in La Mulana.
You know, he just did his little flex thing. Do we want to talk? Before that, I was going to say that reminds me a lot of. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think your mic is starting
on.
to static out.
I will take over. So you. Oh, me?
Yeah, your
Yikes.
mic. Searches
Yeah,
your mic has
it's
started to static up.
unfortunate.
For whatever reason, and I think this is the mark of GC9X in general, is that for whatever reason, halfway into a podcast, Zergy's mic just gets really static-y for whatever reason. Usually he has to start. I don't know if he starts and stops the call again, or how he get fixes it.
Superhero Static Shock.
I never saw that show. I just remember it being on.
I saw a few episodes.
I am mad that they haven't put that on Netflix, because that was actually pretty enjoyable. I mean, it's like, I'm obviously not the intended audience, but you know, it was pretty good actually, and I was glad that he made a reappearance on JLU. So
yeah, it's officially recognized as part of the DC animated universe, right? I'll have to get on that at some point, but I remember I like what I saw of it, and even if it was probably a more aimed for kids and slightly more toned down version of what you typically see in the DCAU, it still had its moments, from what I can tell.
what made me mad is that they kind of moved away from the comics, where he was down with the swirl, and then they gave him a, anyway,
I will not ask what that term means on.
No, basically in canon, in the comics, his girlfriend was a redheaded Jewish girl, and then they kind of gave him a more politically correct, quote unquote, girlfriend on the show. So it's like,
Hey, yeah, I guess that has something to do with its younger audience out there.
We're talking about Home Improvement.
We're talking about Static Shock. My fault.
No, that was my fault. So, well, one thing I was going to say is Tim's Flex animation kind of reminds me of the Incredible Hulk game by
Probe.
Arena or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Arena Probe, one of those two companies. It's
It
funny
was
you
Probe.
bring that up because, this is somewhat related to what we're doing here, or at least somewhat related to the game at hand, but when Xerxes proposed the idea of actually creating a ROM hack that fixed this game rather than, just make it harder, that seemed like such a brilliant idea, like such a simply brilliant idea that I've not seen done before, or very often. Like, there have been translations that have been, improved, or games that have had improved translations. There have been games that have been translated, but most ROM hacks are either, what's the word? Oh, wow, first death on the stream, jeez. Most ROM hacks are either dedicated to making the game harder, making it, changing small aesthetic things, making it into a completely different game, or, as noted earlier, just translating. There aren't any really ROM hacks out there, or even teams that are just dedicated to taking a game and fixing it, which I guess sort of makes sense, because you kind of have to have a degree of understanding of game mechanics that, you might not necessarily have if you're focusing on just ROM hacking, like, say, Super Mario Brothers. The mechanics are already there for you. You just have to figure out ways to make the game harder, and that's not too difficult if you, rack your brains a little bit. Whereas something like this, you kind of have to sit down and say, what is it about this game that's so broken? Like, what can you do to actually make a game that no one wants to play fun? And I just find that kind of idea fascinating, and it reminded me of this one time when I was playing the Incredible Hulk game that JoJo mentioned earlier. And I remember how unfun the game was, so I decided to, input some Game Genie codes. And one of them basically gave the Hulk a bunch of new abilities he normally doesn't have access to, and suddenly the game went from being a terrible slog to being something incredibly fun. And, there were still elements of it that were really mediocre and bad, but it was actually fun to play in spite of those flaws. So,
Are you talking about, like, the extra? He had some extra wrestling moves, but he had to have a certain amount of power.
yes, and it's
really,
almost impossible to have that much health.
Yeah.
I zonked out for a bit. What game are we talking about? Tim Allen doing pro wrestling?
No, the Incredible Hulk by
Incredible
Pro
Hulk.
Entertainment. And just ROM hacks in general, there's so many ROM hacks out there that, just Super Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog made harder, or just given slightly different levels, and very few of the sort that Ryu Sui undertook. And I really wish that would become a thing, like, people would actually examine a bad game and say, is there any way to salvage this? And if there is, maybe they try some things and it works, and maybe if it doesn't, well, they just dump the game because it's completely terrible.
To be
Yeah,
clear,
I mean-
I'm usually the translation type of hacker.
Yeah,
What have you
that's
done?
fine.
What have you done? Tell us what you've done
Yeah.
in that realm.
Well, I have done two projects entirely on my own and finished up a third one. The first this is really kind of silly. The first one I ever did was a game called Sylvanian Families for Game Boy Color. I originally picked it up. The exact reasons are pretty long-winded, but the basic idea was I thought a kid's game would be an easy thing to translate. I was completely wrong about that. The thing was that the game's event script was actually its own programming language in a certain way. In other words, not only did I have to, I wasn't so much battling against the hardware, as it were, as I normally would, but rather a script engine, a proprietary script engine written for this one game. So I basically had to find ways of reverse engineering that. Back then, I resorted to some pretty caveman methods of doing it. I basically went through the code, went through a dump of the script, identified all of the jump and branch instructions manually, and altered those so that my script insertion tool, Atlas, well, not my script insertion tool, but the script insertion tool I use, Atlas, could fix those pointers when it automatically reinserted the script. So yeah, it was a pretty big undertaking. I'm probably only lucky that there was not that much script to work with.
And what else did you do?
The second project my second translation project was a little rhythm action game in that same franchise called Sylvanian Melodies. The interesting thing was all the text in the game was stored as graphics. All of it. I mean.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really kind of unusual, but fortunately there was only only a small amount of text, and two things. One, almost all of the graphics resources were compressed, so I had to deal with that as well. I had to write a decompressor and a recompressor and edit the graphics by hand. But the weird thing was, for the short cutscenes in the game, the dialogue was uncompressed and all stored in a neat little chunk at the end of the ROM.
So you basically just had easy pickings at that point.
Yeah, it was easy pickings for the most part. It took me a while to finish, but not due to difficulty, just due to lack of knuckling down and getting it finished. But the one that you probably have heard of is the Breath of Fire 2 fan translation. That was actually, like I said, I actually did not start on the project, but rather finished it. I teamed up with a German programmer, actually, called Das, I believe his name is, written D4S, who originally created a German language retranslation / enhancement patch. So kind of, sort of in the same spirit of the home improvement thing, but for graphical, but for graphical enhancements more than gameplay enhancements.
Oh, okay.
In fact, that was one thing that was kind of a sticking point of his work, that while the end result looks amazing, there were some things he did kind of fudge to get the finished product out the door. For example, in the original German version of the patch, he took out the ability to buy stacks of items, because the way he had things set up, the multiplayer wouldn't fit. You couldn't buy stacks of items because the way he had the screen set up, there was no way to fit the ETS1, ETS2, ETS3 type multiplayer thing on screen. I'm not sure if I did something I'd regret if you. Let me rephrase that. I'm not sure if the way I solved it was 100% works, but basically it involved moving everything over to the left slightly, including crunching the cache indicator down a little. In retrospect, like the part I was saying about, I'm not sure I'd regret this in the long run, but this means there's one digit less on the cache indicator. So if somebody hypothetically managed to cheat their way into a whole huge sum of money, the maximum you could get in the game, I'm not 100% sure if it would still display properly.
It might glitch out, but hopefully it wouldn't crash the game or anything.
Yeah. It's an extreme edge case. But the other, like I said, another thing that I changed, that I got rid of actually, was that the original German version of the patch had a sort of a 3D effect. It was a sort of a pseudo 3D on the world map, but there was one problem, that it interfered with the dialogue boxes. So you can never have a dialogue box that had more than one page of text, otherwise the game would glitch out and crash. So there's literally, I think, like one scene in the game that absolutely had to have the ability to display more than one page of text at a time, and I really thought it was worth breaking that feature, which still I didn't think that a graphical effect like that was worth cutting out part of the story.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if it's a very important part of the story.
It was, well, not really an important part, more of a short little gag sequence, but it was really awkward, crunched down. It's the sequence where after Ryu's dragon power awakens the first time, and you're talking to the old lady and the shaman outside the burned down hut.
Oh. That was a bottomless pit that I totally did not see coming. But I did gain an extra life, so it's kind of a give-take.
Should we talk about this game's aesthetics at this point?
You mean its audio, and yeah, how the game farts at you pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
That's pretty manly.
The dark side...
Macho.
Any video game console is as capable of fantastic music as it is bad, and I've heard quite a few people complaining about the Genesis sound for being very raw, but it has done a lot of good in its name, like anything from the Sonic games, like anything Jesper Kyde's worked with, for example. And the flip side of the thing, quite a few people are more praiseworthy of the SNES's sound, and there are a lot of classic SNES soundtracks out there. But
back in the day, everybody thought that everybody said that the SNES sounded better. Like back when this was a thing, when the SNES and Genesis were like the main systems.
Indeed. But with SNES sound, we have the dark side of their synthetic organ music, which ends up sounding like a bunch of farting trumpets. And that every single instrument in Home Improvement sounds like farts.
Yeah, that's because the entire game is just a cacophonous series of farts.
That was the rotating room soundtrack from Castlevania 4. I take requests. Usually here on Thursdays, but it's a Friday. But
I don't want to besmirch Nobuo Uematsu, but take any given Final Fantasy track and see if you can make a point out of that. I don't know if we're gaining or losing audience.
okay.
Let's be honest, anyone who would willingly watch us play games and talk about them live is probably in for the long haul to begin with.
They probably don't care.
Probably all of them, Lance. No, it's just... Lord, they are.
As my teeth are numb.
That reminds me, though, since we were on the subject of the music, Muteki actually did an incredibly fantastic... I don't know if it's a remixed re-instrumentation, whatever you want to call it, of the Eggman's theme from Sonic Adventure 2 that he jokingly calls Tool Man. And it is really good. We'll have to upload that for you guys. I have it somewhere on my hard drive. Maybe I can actually play it at some point, but...
Yeah, I guess that's the bad thing about the live podcast. We can't put the music interludes in. Well, maybe we could. I don't know.
I can probably put it in there at the end, or, if... Oh.
Yeah,
well, I'll link to the original Eggman song for reference.
Actually, it should be in the public Dropbox, I think, or if someone could actually upload that to their public Dropbox or something and then link it in the stream chat, that would be really nice. Actually, I wonder if Muteki could do that, because he composed the song, so...
Okay.
Speaking of which, we want to talk about the war stories. I mean, we've definitely gone through the crash course at this point. Is there anything you guys want to note about your experiences with the game? Because obviously you can see me experience the terribleness of this game live. And all the frustrations that entails, like falling into bottomless pits because you can't see anything. Or almost running out of time in a confusing labyrinthine maze because, they hate you. And only give you 10 minutes to find 6 crates in a level that's probably, God, how big would this be in actual real-life terms? Probably size of a football field, bigger.
40 cubits.
I was going to say the Astrodome, but yeah.
Something just gigantic.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like running through the Mall of America and then they're expecting you to make it through and find specific things. It's like being this is your first time in the Mall of America, and you have to find 5 or 6 specific sunglasses or mobile phone kiosks.
Does anybody else remember Supermarket Sweep?
Yes. I also remember all the... What was the... I remember... See, this is a thing. Xerxes would probably remember this, too. There was the Toys R Us. Every year there was this thing where...
The Super Toy Run, and it was at KB Toys or something? It was... I remember that. They used to show that all the time on Nickelodeon.
It was freaking awesome. I mean, it's like... I just remember praying to God that I'd be able to be in that, but then, obviously I didn't, but that would have been so cool. But anyway, yeah, like, things like that, what was I talking about?
Supermarket Sweep?
No, that was Ryusui says that, but yeah, like, it's just ridiculous. You're supposed to go through these areas that are just huge, and, I mean, it really does come down to memorization, and just, you have to make a lot of mistakes to find out where you're supposed to go, and that's kind of typical of these games. But nowadays you have a little more leeway. I mean, they don't tend to have these time attack type games where you're really limited in the amount of time you have, and you have to make all these mistakes and f-ups in order to figure out how you're supposed to go. It's kind of like
Supermarket Sweep in the Mall of America.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, except like it's like Groundhog Day. Like you have to die and go through everything all over again to get it right, and that's kind of how a lot of these games were. And this is how this game was without the merciful addition of. Oh, one thing I am going to mention is Snarbu just had that where if you stand still, one thing I do like about this game is that you can tell where the crates are if you stand still. It'll do a little arrow and show you which way you need to go.
Small concession of mercy.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, but it's a very elegant thing that I can't think of any other games that would do that, without, having a map or whatever.
It reminds me
clocks
of,
and all that.
It reminds me of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, where after you beat the last guy on the stage, you would get
Bubbles the chip.
Monkey. Yeah, would jump on your shoulder and point where you needed to go. It's kind of like that.
Maybe not as cool, but he can summon Crate Radar just by flexing.
Cool.
So
can I be a nitpicking snot about the radar, though? It is much more of a concession than just like being thrown into a dark room and given no directions whatsoever. But I do kind of wish that it would have been like that the indicator arrow would have been on the screen all the time instead of having to waste a few seconds trying to have it appear every time you need it.
Or if you could just press the select button and have it come up that way.
Yeah,
it would be confusing though if you had it there all the time, because it will show you the nearest crate. So there are times in the game where the nearest crate is not the next crate you're going to be able to get. So you'd be like, it would be like if you followed the arrow, if it was always there, you'd end up going in circles. I mean, of course, they could always design the game better.
Maybe only have it pick up one crate in the level or something, but
like
then
that
wouldn't have been much better, really.
Yeah, I mean,
two ways they could have gone about it. On the one hand, they could have simply assumed you would traverse the level in a specific order, and they would point you to the next crate you're likely to find. Or, alternately, they could have put some kind of vague pathing system in place, which would have done that same kind of thing on the fly, and figure out where exactly you're actually likely to go, and not just where the nearest crate is as the crow flies. And I'm not saying that would probably be plausible in a platform game, but still, it might be possible with the right level design.
I mean, with a licensed game, also remember, like, one of the reasons I think these things are rushed, I didn't mention this earlier, is because you only have the license for the amount of time you buy it, the rights for it. So you do have to get it out at some point. If you have the license to produce a home improvement game for the year of 1993, 1994.
Yeah, you have 12 months, really, if that.
Yeah, or well, I mean, you could buy, you could arrange to have more time than that, but that the way to make these things more profitable is not to spend more time on them. You have to have it out in time before your license expires, and you don't want to waste a lot of manpower hours doing it because that cuts into your profit margin. You've already spent money on the license, and you want to get this thing on store shelves. I want to mention though that I don't think this game was originally this hard. I think it started out like easier and they just made it hard kind of at the last minute. I mean, there are certain aspects of the game that do seem like they planned to do something with them and just never did. Like the jackhammer doesn't really do anything all that useful except for breaking platforms and stomping on really small enemies. I mean, it seems like it was supposed to do something else, like make you jump higher or something, because it works in a really kind of intuitive way. And it does have kind of like a bounce effect when you jump and do it. It's not, but it doesn't really end up doing anything useful in the game that I found.
Other than, stomping out little bugs.
And the swinging mechanic is used mostly just as a way of like just lateral movement. There's no like bionic commando style, like there's not many anyway that I encountered. Kind of bionic commando style swinging puzzles.
Yeah, it's not like Umihara Kado say.
Yeah, no, not even close.
I really wish we were playing that game now, actually.
That game is hard too, because the way it's like you only have so much time to do it in, but
Well, at least it has style.
it does. I mean, this
Lots
game.
of hentai.
I'm gonna,
Damn it.
I mean, this game, like, one of the things we mentioned in the thread a lot, at least I think I mentioned a lot, maybe nobody else did, but is that the thing that frustrates me most about this game is that it's so close to being really fun, and it just seems to refuse to be fun at times, like, intentionally. I don't like that. Like, any game where you can, like, have a grappling hook and dynamite and a chainsaw and a nail gun, and that's this goofy where it doesn't really matter what's happening or why, it should not be unfun. It should be very, very fun. And
I agree. That's it just seems kind of like they went into the playtesting stage and then David Crane's like, "What, you mean this is fun? Fuck that." Oh, sorry. We need to make this painful. We need to make the kids, want to tear their fingernails out and stuff like that. It just, I mean, that's the thing. There's just really minor things that, they could have included in the commercial release, and a lot of them are just about everything's in this hack. But it's like they took them out.
I think the control scheme was not intentionally bad.
I think that was just the style at the time, because a lot of games have very similar controls, where jump is like on B and Y is like the most used action, and they must have thought, well, you need to run a lot especially for most of the platforming section, so we'll make that Y so that you have easy access to it, and then you can shoot on the shoulder buttons, but it's at an angle and so on and so forth.
That's actually not the thing that really bothered me was just how many hits the enemies take, even with the other weapons. Like, I never really found an appreciable difference between them, aside from, like some of the weapons will hit in a different way, like the chainsaw has a spread effect, or the nail gun kind of has a slight scatter to it. I mean, there's some of that, but I never really noticed that one was particularly stronger than another. So
no, I mean, it doesn't have like the Mega Man or Metroid style thing where each weapon has a purpose. I mean, that's one of the things that just seems like they just either they didn't have time to do it or they weren't really thinking that far ahead.
Hey guys, I hate to interrupt the current tangent, but we're getting a couple requests if few of our other members can jump in now. Would you like to include anyone else now, or should we wait a bit yet?
We could probably throw Miteki in here.
Okay.
I'd like to just limit it to former hosts, so we can go up, from there. That reminds me, though, since we're talking about licensed games, oftentimes it's just about as boring to develop, or it's just about as boring for the people developing the game as it is for the people playing it, or it's just as terrible. Like, I mean, would you honestly want to make a game this bad? Would you want this? Would you want Home Improvement, the video game, on your resume?
I think that I don't know. I got the impression that some of the people involved in this game really liked the show.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do something that was like goofy and fun with it. Like, it's not like the game is completely
broken,
abusing the license. Like, it does kind of stay
true to the material,
sort of fever dream.
It has power tools. It recognizes that the show had characters in it who were specific people.
I mean, I'll admit,
I like the tool time set scenes. I mean, there's actually some kind of nice artwork on that, and
it's very Sierra Adventure-esque.
Yeah. Was it Bobinator that was saying that the actual sprites in this game they look like something that'd be in a Sierra Adventure game in the 1990s, and I think that was really an apt way of describing it.
They're pretty well animated too. The player Tim is really well animated. I think. I like we were just looking at the jackhammer thing that Snarbo was doing.
We were talking about Incredible. Yeah, we were talking about Incredible Hulk and Pitfall: The Mind Adventure. And
yeah, that's the funny thing.
This is really similar to that, where you have a well-animated character and you can actually do stuff, unlike Blackthorn, where it's very rigid and very controlled, like that, or Flashback, where the controls on that. So it's kind of a well-animated game, but you're kind of able to move around, and the only thing is it's a little bit sloppier as a game.
Yeah. I just want to point out that Snarbu just literally fought fire with fire. They were like a fire enemy that crawls down the stairs, and he killed it with a blowtorch.
Yes, yes, that always cracked me up too, because the first weapon you get in the Temple of Tools is the flamethrower, and there's fire right at the start of that, and I noticed that, and I'm like, really? Oh.
I just thought a good episode of one of those hospital dramas, like ER or something, would have been like, let's fight fire with fire. You mean, yes, cancer with cancer. And they give somebody who has cancer a different form of cancer, and the two cancers battle it out to the death, and they just exhaust each other.
So it's kind of like Trauma Team, isn't it?
I've ever heard, though. It's almost plausible.
Yeah, it sounds dumb until I turn out to be right, and then everybody's like, oh my god.
Actually, I recall reading back when I was in high school, so about 7 or 8 years ago, I guess at this point, Actually, no, maybe more 10 years ago. I was reading something in Scientific American that was here's a way some researchers think we might be able to help defeat cancer. And it's to reprogram cold germs, because we've been studying them so long looking for a cure. We know how their DNA operates, and so we'll mutate cold germs in such a way that they only target cancer cells.
Yeah, because bioweapons like that just works out so great all the time. So.
Yeah, but in the end,
that's
man the ultimate bioweapon.
Yeah.
Oh.
I love when that's always the ending or twist to something. It's man is the real monster, because that was kind of the point of the movie Alien, and then it kind of is. It's kind of a mixed message there, because you have this monster aboard this ship.
Is that
Oh, wait a minute. Did any of us officially introduce Muteki?
Oh, yes, he's our sound guy, so...
Yeah, well, you sort of mentioned I was joining, so I figured everyone kind of realized by this point.
Indeedly do.
If they don't recognize your voice, you've been doing this for a couple of episodes now.
Yeah, I've been in 2 or 3 of these already, and you kind of mentioned that you were adding me in, so...
Yeah.
Very well, just press every. Keep doing what you were doing, which I forget. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just... The whole man is the real monster. I mean, there was also some other things to Alien, which I will not mention in polite company, but...
What, penetration?
Full of alien wing wong.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, wait.
There's so many movies like that, though. Aliens, the sequel, did that too, and it's like, well, I guess that's kind of true, because only a man would want to try and tame this horrible monster, but then it's like, on the other hand, man doesn't have acid for blood, and doesn't have an inner set of jaws that are so powerful that they can crush, like, people's skulls just from sheer force.
I mean, the other alternative is build a giant robot to do that for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you get the Terminator movie, so, you know.
Man is the real monster.
I mean, like, the man is the real monster is kind of like, I don't know, what, Moby Dick or something? Is that the point? Like, Captain Ahab, like, kind of invents this villain of a whale, even though the whale does not gives, like, 0% of a damn about humanity or anything. He's just a whale.
He's just a whale.
The whale does not care. You're chasing it.
Just there.
Yeah.
And
you're
stuff
just
happens.
chasing it and provoking it, and like you're Anyway, did we talk about the ice ground physics in this game?
Yeah, they're very
so
slippery.
You can't really like. One of the things I've noticed about this level is it's probably not so bad because there are basically no hills in it. But I did play through all of the first level, and one of the things I noticed is you can't stand on hills at all. You're going to end up like just pushed back down the hill because of the screwed up way that the game physics work. So everything feels like you're basically on ice.
I think this game either started out, whether it was before or after the license was procured, as a Sonic clone, and in various ways, like the whole point of like the running and jumping and slopes, and I think that's what it was supposed to be. And the problem is that it's not
Sonic Chew clone.
Yeah, it's really
go fast.
It's way too hard to be.
Yeah, and it's Sonic by way of Pitfall in some ways too, you know, or at least the Mayan Adventure Pitfall. It still surprises me seeing this game that David Crane had absolutely nothing to do with that one.
Oh yeah, that's true. The Mayan Adventure, the Pitfall.
Yeah.
They really did. I mean, like I said, like he makes difficult, tricky games, and it's interesting to see this game because this is kind of like. Not totally, but kind of like, I mean, there's no way you can tell me that he didn't like the Sonic games and wasn't trying to make something like it. And this is what he came up with, basically. And I think that whether he intended it to be this hard or not, my theory is that after it was finished, you know, they looked at it and said, well, kids are going to be able to finish this way too quickly. And, you know, we don't want people to just rent it.
Oh yeah,
because renting was actually a huge problem back then, just like you know, like DRM is now.
Yeah, at least in the U.S. I know Japan's never really had.
Yeah, they've never had a rental market really, from what I understand.
And it's probably a good thing, because what does Japan do when they want to make a Sonic clone that has, like, you know, weaponry and some combat and stuff? We get Rocket Knight Adventures. For those of you playing at home, does anyone have bingo yet?
Yeah.
It's a heck of a game, and I'm glad that's the one you keep mentioning, as I want to mention Castlevania 3 every now and again as being one of my personal favorites. But, I forget, are we still technically on War Stories at this point?
Well, yeah, sort of.
I guess I sort of am, because I haven't been in here yet.
There's something I wanted to mention, though, a couple of things, two things. One, this game did not come with instructions. It came with a slip of paper that said, real men don't need instructions. That's it. The game doesn't explain anything to you about the game itself.
Yeah, so it's basically ahead of its time, and it's exactly what Atlas has been doing for like the last 5 freaking RPGs they've released. So
that's what every company.
I'm not bitter.
Why would seriously, like nowadays, like why would you need to include an instruction manual? Like you just put the PDF up on your website and it doubles as advertisement.
They should. I think if you're going to do that, though, they should at least have it on the disc too, as consolation. You know, it's not that hard to put in a manual on a disc.
But
I don't
dude,
think.
they do that. Haven't you seen like any modern game tutorial to move forward?
Oh, right.
To jump, press the A button.
And then they always like break the fourth wall too. So you're like, you know where the A button is, don't you, Samus? You know, it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
I mean, that's one of the funniest things about a lot of the forced tutorials of modern games is that obviously, you know, they want to design it in a way that feels comfortable and natural to people, and most of these people who are designing these games play a lot of other games, you know, as a way of studying them. And so most games are going to map, you know, on a standard Xbox controller and stuff. They're probably going to map A to being a jump button, B is probably some main attack, X is a secondary function, and Y is probably either something context sensitive or a specific like secondary attack. And this is like how almost everyone has been designing games since, you know, like the end of the 90s. So it becomes all the sillier that we have these manifold forced tutorials when it's just like all of these moves are basically the same ones in every other game you've ever played.
yeah, I mean, also, I think in this game, it's so simple. Like, you really don't need instructions.
Yeah,
So it
you'll
doesn't
figure it
matter
out
if
pretty
there's-
quickly. I mean, I didn't know what the controls were, and I picked it up.
The controls really don't make much sense from a modern standpoint, but like you're saying, I can sort of see why they thought they were a good idea, even if they're just not really very comfortable when it comes to all of the stuff the game expects you to do. Also, I should point out that this game was apparently planned for the Genesis. My main reason for pointing this out is that you'd think effects like the ghost sprites would probably be mapped onto like the transparent layer on the SNES, but here, no. They certainly look completely solid to me.
There's also the
Oh,
dithering
yeah.
going on with the sprites as well. That's a very Genesis-esque sort of thing. Like a lot of the sprites, especially the more transparent-looking ones, are dithered, which is very
That's
strange.
right.
Notice on a television at the time because you have limited color quality, and you know basically nobody's going to be hooking it up with, you know, anything along the lines of HDMI. Maybe if you live in Britain, but even then I don't believe it was very common. And sometimes I'd like to just see if I can find S-card cables for some of my consoles, but it's like no, they're still pretty expensive and relatively rare.
Yeah, I mean, you could play SNES games on S-Video, which does look pretty good. About as good as I think you'd really want these games to look, but
Right. I think some level of blurring is actually usually beneficial to these things.
well, they counted on it. I mean,
Yeah,
in Genesis, like
absolutely.
the dithering effect and stuff like that, like they counted on people playing these through RF, you know, hookups.
Yeah, that's how I played
and,
it.
And when you do it, you know, you get this weird kind of transparency effect out of it.
Because like each sort of pixel blends into its
Right.
the ones next to it.
Exactly.
It's like it's really its own sort of blur. It's hard to compare it to anything else because most other like common
Right.
blur techniques behave differently.
So when you play those games, especially on the Genesis, when you play them on an emulator, they don't look. I mean, everybody expects them to look like that now, but they're not supposed to look like that. They're not supposed to be that clear.
That's actually been used as a detriment to the Genesis's graphics capabilities, as well as people not realizing that it wasn't really designed to be seen raw like that. Although,
No,
Yeah.
it's a very old machine, like
Mhm.
older than the Super Nintendo.
Like by 2 years almost.
Yeah, so like they designed it for people to play on what was available at the time, and that's what was expected. It's like you don't play a Genesis game with like pixel perfect clarity. It doesn't look the way anyone thought it was going to look. And that's
Yeah.
why, it
And
seems so much.
especially as the system got older, I think they felt like they needed to compete more directly with the SNES. You see a lot of games that look like really more heavily dithered. Like I feel like Streets of Rage 3, for example, by the time you get into 1994, this was pretty common way of doing things. And like Ristar in particular, as much as I love that game, it is like everything is dithered like.
but it looks so
to-
nice when you put on a composite blur filter, or really
It's
any kind
really
of blur
nice
filter.
looking. It's one of the best looking games on the console. I mean, not surprisingly, it came around so late when they really understood how graphics on the console end up looking. And it really there's no way to do justice to the graphics in that game without having that sort of blur effect on it. So Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the Genesis sort of gets a bum deal in like modern, like sort of retrospective,
Yeah.
like gaming summaries. The other one being that a lot of times the sound emulation on them is
Yes, it's not
very
accurate at
good.
all.
No, like for all of the complaints we get about, like, say, the audio in a game like Shaq Fu, and it's kind of a lazily put together licensed game, much like this one is. But it also doesn't sound as bad as you'll find on some videos, because there are some effects that people don't really understand how to emulate very well, because the guys who made the chip, the Yamaha guys, didn't really document them very well, and their behavior is strange unless you use it according to very specific settings. So there are a couple, like, sort of almost cymbal-like percussion instruments that play in a lot of American games, and they always sound like really obnoxious and noisy in some bad emulators, because they don't really understand how it's supposed to work. And when I first started creating music on the Genesis, this was kind of a big deal for me, because like the system that I was composing it, that I was using to compose it, the sort of programs I was using, and when I actually got like flashcards and started playing it back on the system, it tended not to sound very much like the way a lot of emulators were rendering it in the meantime, which always frustrated me, because it meant it was often very difficult to figure out what something was going to sound like, until I played it back on the console. But it's also one of the reasons why when I make music for the Genesis, since I do have the flash card, I always make sure to eventually like get a hardware recording, especially if I'm doing something really weird or unusual.
What Genesis flash cartridge do you use, by the way?
I actually use the old Mega Card. It's a little bit. It's not really state of the art anymore. It sort of was at the time, but right now something like the EverDrive is a little bit better. Mostly I got it because I had a Sega CD and I have a laptop which doesn't have any parallel ports. So it was the easiest way at the time for me to flash ROMs onto it without, having to, hook up this weird cable monstrosity and this strange circuit board. You plug it in, then you plug in like 2 or 3 cables into the computer, and then some software that some bedroom coder came up with, in order to actually put stuff on there. But instead, with that, I can just stick a CD into the Sega CD unit and then load up most games on it. At this point, I wouldn't recommend it, because other flash cards, have better support for larger games. They actually support saving, which this one doesn't. It's just, non-volatile RAM for the actual game itself, and that's it. And it doesn't have as much as a lot of other cards. Something like the EverDrive is a good suggestion. You'd want the EverDrive because it has, game save. It can read ROMs directly off of an SD card, and it also has the flexibility of being able to work with the Sega CD in the same way that the Mega Card does. One of the other benefits of the Mega Card was that you could boot it up into a Sega CD BIOS mode, and from there you could use it as a sort of region switch cart, so that you could boot up like the Japanese BIOS instead, so you could play Japanese games. And I have a couple of games that I've played on that through there. The main one being, the original soundtrack version of Sonic CD, but there are a couple others as well. Yeah.
Ryusui, were you going to say something? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I was actually going to point out that there isn't really a transparency layer like you might think on the Super NES hardware. What it has, there's a hardware function that allows for transparency, but if I recall, it isn't. It does take some extra programming knowledge to use properly, if I recall.
Yeah, it has all those different modes, right? And it's probably one of the modes, if I had to guess.
Geez. That's one thing that I do like about the way the Genesis hardware works. It may not be as powerful as the SNES in some ways, but in addition to operating at a default resolution that's much higher, it also everything makes a lot more sense. Generally, there are only a couple of modes, and you can do just about anything on the console in any of them. Like, the biggest difference is, interlaced or non-interlaced, and, like, shadow and highlight effects.
It's at this point in the game where you start to run into enemies that actually respawn, particularly really small ones.
Yeah, I thought I saw some respawning enemies in the previous level, but I wasn't sure. I guess.
I think the beetles might sometimes, but it's not all the time. It must be under really specific conditions.
I wonder if what weapon you use makes a difference. Probably not, but
I really don't know.
So, I guess we're done with the crash course segment.
Yeah,
Wait,
way
I
past
thought
done.
I thought we were on war.
I assumed we were doing war stories
Yeah.
already. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure the distinction's going to matter for this one.
we can always edit it later on. Just
No,
sort
we're
of
not
show.
gonna. This one's not going to be edited. In part
Oh, I thought
because
Snarf said he was going to make like a highlight reel or something.
Well, yeah, I can just
Oh.
cut down. I can just cut down the video or just upload the raw one, and then maybe do just some bits where like I fall into a pit and die or something, tacked on at the end.
well, you've only died a few times.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive because this game is like I said, people watching this stream don't understand how hard the game is because you already know everything you're supposed to do, but it's really, really difficult.
It's
Oh,
extremely
damn it.
difficult.
It's
that
one of
was
the hardest games I've ever played. It's not like hard in a way that it's just unfair. It's like
Yeah.
kinda
Like
soul
people
just-
talk about like walking out of like movies because they don't like them. I walked out of this game because I was just so frustrated with it,
But
because it was
but like I said,
I got
but like I was saying, it's like it's the most frustrating thing for me is that it's so close to being a fun game. Like if you just tweak a few more things, like if you get tone down the ice ground a little bit, and make the timer on the weapon on the invincibility and the appearance of special items and stuff, like tone that down a bit. It would go so far in making the game like fair and good. Like it would not be a masterpiece, but it would be
yeah,
a
it
good
would
game.
be competent. It wouldn't be the game that everyone would talk about as being this is a shining example of what the SNES has to offer. But you could play it, you could enjoy it. It'd be it'd be less Bubsy and more something like Kid Chameleon maybe. Actually, I really
Yeah.
like Kid
Or like
Chameleon.
Plock or something. Like it's
Oh man, Plock.
not as good as music. But yeah. Anyway, since I usually check out after the crash course is done, I'll just check out now,
Okay.
and JoJo can take over the slow talking old guy role.
I think one of the things we forgot to ask, is about like a specific manner of damning this game with faint praise, and I saw that, and I actually do have a good example. I know you guys pointed out the lightning chainsaw earlier, and
Yes.
it's a very cool looking weapon. It's the coolest looking weapon whose hitbox is so ill-defined as it, because it's so hard to hit stuff with it, despite the fact that it shoots out in this huge arc, like a little bit in front of you.
I know. I mean, it's like you would expect it to be like just this god weapon.
I
mean,
know.
it's a chainsaw for one thing, but yeah, it's
It's
really
a
hard to hit
It's a
anything.
chainsaw that shoots lightning in
Yeah,
like.
interestingly, it's like the only weapon in this game that doesn't seem to have any relation to the actual tool. Like everything else, like this arc welder or something, like at least does kind of what a welder does, except they don't shoot. The sparks.
You have to make some concessions in order to make it at least a remotely entertaining game.
Right, but like dynamite explodes, nail guns shoot nails everywhere.
Besides,
you know.
ridiculous you make it, the more in style with the nature of the game it is.
Right, but at no point would you expect a chainsaw to do what chainsaws do in this game.
No, I'm
It's
still
still-
not sure what that is.
I also don't know what kind of tool he's using to swing around on the grappling hook. That doesn't seem to have any basis in.
Tape measure.
It's a tape measure. That's what it is.
Maybe, yeah. Hard to
I don't
say.
know.
It actually it looks actually if I can pot no. It looks like it's
Could be a
being launched
witch.
out of a gun or something. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, if you ever get one of those 100-foot tapes, they have the little claw on the end of them, so that it hooks onto
Really?
something. So
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe
yeah.
that is it. That would make total
That's a
sense.
possibility. I was honestly thinking something more like a winch, say. Like, the sort of thing you might find on the front of some trucks. Like, something you hook up some really long, like, really sturdy cable onto, and you use it to just sort of crank up something really heavy.
Well, if it's a tool that no normal person would ever need, it is kind of in character for Tim to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was what he was always like. I think my favorite episode of the show when I was a kid was like later on in the show. They just needed to really up the ante on the kind of zany stuff he would do. And so it would get really, really crazy. And I think one time he built like the ultimate like man kitchen. And it was like it's like stainless steel floors, walls, and ceiling. Had a microwave that could like split atoms.
Yeah, it turns
And,
potato green, glowing,
yeah.
like made of kryptonite.
He put on like a lead vest before he turned it on. and other tomfoolery was afoot. If the show got that wacky, that's what I was saying. Is like I wonder if we could add additional dialogue changes or something to fit this game into the show's canon.
Yeah, I mean, it would be sort of fun to actually have in between each substage, like between 2-2 and 2-3, to have just some weird, goofy banter between like Al on location and everybody else in the studio.
Yeah, like the actual Tool Time meta show, like.
Yeah, I mean, bless their heart. In between the levels, they really are trying, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is not. Yeah, like I said, I think most of the people who worked on this game, like the principal designers, possibly including Crane himself, probably seem to really like the show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this was just a paycheck to them. Otherwise,
No,
I don't think they would have made a game like this. At least, I think.
Nobody would. Yeah, I mean, nobody would remember the game because it wouldn't be interesting at all. Like, at least it's interesting for how infuriating it is, but it's also, it's so close to being playable. Like I keep.
Yeah, like you say, there
repeating.
are a lot of good ideas in here, and it sort of makes sense, in the context of the show, like some of what's going on here. It's just
Right. I mean, obviously, no,
Temple
like.
of Tools. It's just so weird how nonchalant they are all about that. Of course, it must be in the Temple of Tools. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, like most sitcoms, like the longer it went on, the zanier it got. So it's not like totally out of character.
No, it's not. No.
It's possible.
I was going to mention this earlier, but I completely forgot to about licensed games. But this was definitely a labor of love, at least it was an Ocean's attempt to make a game based on Radio Flyer. Apparently they had the license to that movie at some point, and I assume it was before the movie came out, and they saw it and they're like, no, we can't make a game based off of this.
But you could. This game is proof you
yeah.
could make a game based off of anything. It's like,
Why?
There
How
was a
would you
game
make a game
based
based off of Radio Flyer, though?
There was a game based
Actually,
off of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. All bets are off.
Yeah, but that was
Yeah,
it was a
for,
weird, irreverent
for-
80s style sort of game. So, sorry.
I mean, there's an Aerosmith video game.
see, that also makes
Yeah, but
perfect
that's
sense.
not about child abuse. That's what Radio Flyer was about. That movie was about child abuse, and the mentally handicapped kid creates a flying machine out of a radio flyer, and he flies away to get away from his abusive family. It's just like, then again, like all of Ocean's games were basically about abusing the player, so I guess that's ironic for
Yeah,
some.
that sort of reminds me, though. That seemed to be a very common theme of movies from the era. Like there was also North. Like North was not good at all, but there was North, and then there was the movie that was almost the exact same thing that came about like a couple months later that was called Trading Mom.
I remember
Like,
that
both
one
of-
very vaguely.
Yeah.
That one was kind of weird.
They were both weird, and they had so very similar like plot points and characters. There's like token minority stereotypes that you see partway through. It's like if imagine if a show like Series of Unfortunate Events, like the film adaptation of that, didn't have that sort of weird adult self-awareness behind it. And that's like both of those films at the same time.
Speaking of which, though, there was a licensed game based on a Series of Unfortunate Events. You get 3 guesses as to what genre it is, and the first 2 don't count.
Adventure.
Actually, no, platformer, but close enough.
Oh, really? Actually, I would have figured adventure myself. Like something Telltale-ish, maybe.
One thing I'll say before I go for the night is that like the main reason I put this in the list of games for the randomizer to select was that there's a Retronauts episode a while ago where they mentioned this as an example of the kind of game that would never ever be made again, because like they didn't know anything in particular about the game except that it was based on Home Improvement and it had dinosaurs, which is you know, zany. It's crazy. It's like there's no reason for it, but
yeah,
you know, the idea.
I mean, Jurassic Park was cool. Everybody liked Jurassic Park. It had Jeff Goldblum.
Right.
Jeff Goldblum is funny.
Yeah, that was the appeal of that movie for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum. But or Newman, right? Newman was in it.
He was indeed.
And Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, well, he was in everything.
He got eaten.
Yeah, this is before he got in everything, though.
Once he gets eaten by the shark.
You mean
The CGI shark. Oh, God.
The
LL
mutant
Cool J's
CGI shark.
stomach
And LL
muscles.
Cool J is the one guy who survives in that movie.
Yeah, it's
Deep
because
Blue
his
Sea.
six-pack repelled the shark.
Well, I mean, he.
Okay, before you go, though, I want to know, what is the most inappropriate 90s license for a game that you could imagine? You know, like, imagine
that was
Ocean.
not actually made.
Yeah, exactly.
Twin
Like,
Peaks. There was no Twin Peaks video game, right?
Was there a game based on the movie My Girl?
There was an unofficial.
Oh, man,
fan
that would've been
game
awesome.
Based on the Black Lodge, actually, but
I would have loved to, like, you know,
Oh, yeah,
play
that's
like
true.
a
They
sequence
did
where
make
the
that
bees
little
like sting
Black
him to
Lodge
death.
thing, didn't they? I mean, that's not
They
like
did.
official,
We
but
played it.
To answer your question, though, JoJo, the crying game.
oh yes, that's a
See,
very-
I would have. I really wanted to play an Ocean game based on Bad Lieutenant. There'd be like a first-person scene where you have to aim at the, you know, the stolen car that the girls, you know, took from their dad.
How about a platformer based on A Time to Kill by John Grisham?
That would be great. I want to make that right now.
I don't
Did you ever
know.
see that? There was something about a game with. It was a Streets of Rage clone based on Doubt with.
Yeah, I saw that. It was like a parody for the
Wait,
Sega Genesis.
Oh my god, I have
What?
not.
Oh, hey, it's Doubt for the
Never-
Sega Genesis.
That was great.
I haven't seen this.
This is a
I
clip,
need to
yeah.
see
I
this,
forget what show it was. It was for something, like an
It
award
was something
ceremony.
they were like playing. Yeah, it was a good mock-up for the cart, but they were playing it, and it was like you had to protect the kid from getting, you know, kidnapped by other priests.
Oh hey, it was done by the Lonely Island. I like those.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Here, I'll link into the live. There we go.
Oh man, it's too bad we can't edit in like sound effects and stuff. I want to make a digitized, like sample digitized voice of Samuel L. Jackson saying, "Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell." Like,
Ezekiel
but in, like, Genesis-
23:19 or whatever.
The
that
Sega
was.
Genesis.
I forget that line.
it's like, like a Genesis game based on A Time to Kill. That was the movie. That was the movie where he says that, right?
I think so.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
It's like this, you know, it's a really, you know, serious stuff, and let's make a Genesis game out of it.
I bet it's a Contra clone or something. Or no, maybe
Really depressing,
Oh,
like game
no.
over.
Plays like
Ultimate.
Dr. Chaos. The end.
ultimate 90s game would be Philadelphia.
Oh.
Oh, funny you mentioned that. Do you remember the Saturday Night Live sketch?
No.
There was one where they, you know, some kid like runs in. He's like, "Oh yeah, let's play Philadelphia," and it was they were using footage from Galaxy Force 2, but then, like at the end, like it said, "Hang up," they had Philadelphia, but they were like, help, so and so, reunite with his gay lover Manuel, and like the Galactic Space Force, things like that. It was
Okay, this time I didn't last podcast. I did intentionally rip off Saturday Night Live, but this time was not intentional. I don't remember that at all. I don't think I ever saw that.
I was going to say though, like at least you're ripping off, when it was still funny.
That's the people who say, man, there was a time when SNL was still relevant, was something that other people said, to people who watched SNL during the 90s.
Yeah,
but,
no,
the 80s, man. I was watching that on Netflix, and man, that was terrible. Like with Joe Pesci, and
really bad.
Really bad.
Really
so
bad.
like, it's not like it's been, good. It was.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like it was always good before.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it was terrible for most of the 80s, except for the Eddie Murphy stuff, which he basically carried the show. And then
I liked some of
it
Steve
also-
Martin's stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it also had the one period of Billy Crystal's life where he was funny. I think he did some funny stuff. Anyway, I'm done. I'll see you guys later. I can't keep watching this game.
Yeah,
It's giving
it's
me a headache.
All right, Xerxes, take care,
This game,
sir.
Hi, man.
See you
Actually,
guys
we'll have to
later.
take a break here
Speaking of
in
which,
a
the
moment. I want to beat
level
this stage, though.
progressively longer is what just
And you get
is
less
so
time for
frustrating.
it, too. They make the stages longer, and you get less time. Now, by default, again, you start off with around 600 seconds in some of the later worlds, and that's 10 minutes with the normal timer, but that is not enough time, believe it or not.
No.
Hey,
It's just
Snarber, sound
ridiculous.
quality sounds a little.
Yeah, something's going on with Dropbox here. Give me a moment.
Okay. I was going to mention something about War Story earlier, something that I blew a gasket about in the IRC, but I'm not sure how worth it'd be to mention here because it's really the stupidest, pissiest thing ever. I don't know why it even angers me
Oh, my
so
mouse
much.
cursor has disappeared.
Go on.
Okay.
Well,
I want to hear it. I might not have been there for this. I want to hear this.
All right, Key. Well, we've all established all the real negatives about this game, about how derivative it is, how overtly challenging, how it's just
It's not
really
challenging. It's just badly balanced. I mean,
yeah, that
it's,
too.
I mean, it's the Contra hardcore scenario. I mean, that's kind of like one of the big examples where you have a game where they basically tweaked a few values and suddenly, bam, it's harder. It's less likely for people to rent and then send back. I mean, that it's just kind of amazing to realize that was a thing back in the day, that people would deliberately make games harder if the intention of making people want to buy them instead of just rent them. I mean, Working Designs was pretty infamous about doing that kind of thing with a lot of Japanese imports back in the day. I remember the final boss of Pop being a headache, and I kind of wonder if it was easier in the Japanese version, or if that was Working Designs messing with the difficulty.
Which game?
Pop Mail for Sega CD. It was.
Oh,
it
Pop
was-
Mail.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a case of that. I'm surprised that they did stuff like that for the Sega CD Lunar games, at least, because it's like those games are not short. I mean, they're some of the earliest, really competent CD RPGs that at least made it over to this side of the Pacific. I mean, there were obviously all of the PC 98-ish stuff that's out there.
I'm just curious what they did with Vi, because that was probably the most grind-heavy console RPG I've ever dealt with.
If you think that's bad, though, they added grinding to Silhouette Mirage, which is a game that wasn't really
oh man,
built
that was
for that.
terrible.
Jeez.
I
Yeah,
still like the
I've
game.
never
I
heard
still
any-
love the aesthetic and the way it plays. It's in spite of the flaws that they introduced, rather than
Yeah, that's the only way I've ever heard that game described, is that it's very fun. It's a really cool idea. There's so much good stuff going on there, but then they cock it up by making it take too long to play. Excuse me.
Is this the point where I know my original tangent actually had nothing to do with the challenge of the game? It was actually more of a conscious design choice I wanted to groan about.
What was it?
That, spoilers, for the third stage boss, they had the gall to completely rip off Castlevania and make it Dracula and make him act exactly like he effing does in Castlevania, which, come on, know your place, people. Like, did you really have to...
Know your role.
I don't know why that cheesed me off so much and it just completely bite off Dracula. He does exactly like he does. He warps around, he shoots fireballs, and that's exactly it. I mean, come on! That's
no worse
Is
than
this level 3-3 or 3-4 or anyone?
I don't even know at this point. And here's the bad thing. 3-3 and 3-4 are almost the exact same stage. Like, they recycle like 90% of the level design.
You can tell, like, they even really ran out of ideas, like,
Or at least
probably
time.
after the first world. Yeah, and, like, I don't know why it just cheesed me off so much that they had the gall to bite an They had the gall to rip off an archetypical boss from a much more famed and awesome game. I don't know what it is about that. Like, I don't know if it was intended as a conscious tribute, but I think it was just a lazy sort of, slapdash boss put together to just get the game out the door. Because I don't know. Am I being stupid here? Like,
I don't know. We should ask Konami, who have been using the same damn sprites for those games since 93, 94.
Yeah, 93 was when
93.
the Rondo of
Dracula
Blood,
X.
Yeah, when Iga just... Yeah, tell me
Iga
about
and his
this.
cowboy hat and his whip.
For the record, Castlevania...
Is he allowed to touch those games anymore? I mean, like,
I don't think he's the director of them, no.
They just
Did you
give
get a
us those
restraining
Spaniards.
order?
with that stuff.
I'd like to say that I got a restraining order after completely diddling the series with Judgment, but...
Honestly, after playing, what's it called? The 3DS game. I'd rather, play Judgment with lemon juice being poured into my eyes and...
Yeah, Judge, I speak as a massive fan of Castlevania. It's, all things considered, is probably still my favorite video game series of all time, but I'm not sure if what
Judgment's pretty terrible, but, that game was... It's just so bland. It's like the cornflakes of Castlevania games. It's just so...
Which game?
Mirror of Fate.
Mirror of Fart. I mean, it's just...
Oh yeah.
It's just so boring.
I gotta drop out now though, because I had some other plans and they've apparently started to happen now.
Oh,
so.
Okay, no problem, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So,
surprised it went
go
this
ahead
late.
and like
I hope
that.
you guys
Come on.
managed to cram some enjoyment out of this game. I wish you the best of luck in that.
Right.
All right,
Well,
Keith.
thanks for visiting that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Do what we do. It was good having you on. You take care, and we'll see you around when we do, sir.
So should we open the floodgates to anyone else? I think Bobinator wanted in.
Yeah, I definitely.
Bob
I think
Frag
Bob wanted to be on, and didn't Lance say he wanted to be on?
Yeah,
I'm not
potentially,
sure.
I think.
That'd be pretty cool to get Lance on one of these.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
would be.
okay. Bob just asked.
Yeah, so let Bob in.
Hey guys,
Hey, Bobinator.
Hey, what's up, Bob?
can I please bring up one thing I want to bring up?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to talk about other sitcoms that got turned into games.
Like Seinfeld? Oh, wait, never mind. That should have been a game.
Hi, someone called me?
Whoa.
Oh, sorry, Weasel. I don't know if you wanted to be called. I just buzzed you for this because...
Well, to
Is
be
this still
fair, I
getting recorded, by the
was...
way?
What'd you say?
Is it still getting recorded?
Yeah, it's still alive.
Okay.
To be fair, I was getting kind
I
of bored, so...
Yes, that was the thing.
What was the thing now? Sorry.
Gilligan's Island on the NES.
Yeah, that's right.
Where he plays the skipper set and Gilligan just mucked in everything.
Isn't that by Atlas?
Yeah.
I think.
The same
I mean,
people who
it's-
did the
so
Jaws game.
Bandai published it, but I think Atlas or Pack-In Video did the actual design.
Pack and Fudge video.
Actually, before we get too far...
And don't diss Die Hard. That was actually a pretty cool game for. That was like their glitch because that was actually a pretty fun game.
Actually, before we get off to any other tangents, I just wanted to bounce back to what JoJo was saying about Mirror of Fate earlier, because I wanted to tie that back into Home Improvement. The thing with Home Improvement overall is that its main failing is just how painfully mediocre it is. Like, it does have that terrible appeal to it, but it's just so ultimately by the book as a platformer can get that actually makes it worse. You know, compared to, like, Takeshi's Challenge, which is just an unplayable, like, cynical
It's a
mess
joke
of
game.
But yeah, there is that as well. And that's on that subject, Castlevania. Judgment is really friggin' terrible, but it's a very special kind of terrible. And from what I understand, Mirror of Fate doesn't even have that level of bad going for it. Just
So
Yeah,
it's not
that's the
so
thing,
bad
it's just-
good,
it's
just
incredibly
so
boring.
bad it's horrible.
See, that's the thing
Yeah.
about bad games made these days. They're so at least competently designed that you can't really say anything else about them other than they're boring.
yeah,
that's true
yeah,
for
we're
a lot
getting
of
a lot
bad
more
games.
mediocre bad than bad games.
So
And
okay,
I want,
it's average.
yeah, I kind of honestly want bad games to make a return.
I'm still waiting for Daikatana too. Don't disappoint me, John.
Yes. That will be when the industry crashes, and I don't want to get into my views on that, but
So as you may notice, there's some recycled scenery here. You may or may not notice because, well, it's really hard to tell because everything looks the same in this game. So,
this part just gets even boring.
I reached
and that's a bottomless pit. Wonderful. Now, something I didn't mention yet is that these suits of armor, for whatever reason, remind me of Kuros from the Wizards and Warriors games, which I would much rather play, even if they are just about as hard, if not harder, because you know.
Well,
Can I bring up something about Absolute?
Weren't they made by Rare?
Absolute.
Yes.
They were. What's that?
Yeah, I think that
So-
explains everything about the difficulty there.
I looked up their game history, okay?
Mhm.
And do you want to know what their final game was?
I remember you talking about this, but I don't remember
Their
the exact
final game was Rise of the Robots for the 3DO.
Fitting punishment.
Punishment. Sorry, Dr. Ash.
Yes,
What?
yes.
Yeah, that is a tribute to Super Ash, and if you're listening, probably
An
not.
excellent reference.
A fitting punishment.
Oh my, yes.
Oh, they also made. I should mention they made another licensed game, or they made quite a few, and another one that really kind of confused me was the movie Toys. They made the licensed game for that, and I mean,
Oh man, talk about like the Radio Flyer level of
yeah, that movie
what
is
the
like,
hell?
yeah, and the game's
That
almost
was-
unplayable. I don't know if I have that in my collection. I might.
The movie is almost unplayable.
I actually didn't mind the movie too much. It was okay.
I've never
It was
watched
kind
the
of-
movie.
it was
All I
just-
knew was that there were bunches of little red wagons with that name on them.
Oh, you mean oh, we were talking about the movie Toys with Robin Williams, I think. Now,
Oh my.
and what were you gonna say about that, JoJo?
No, I just man, that was like one of those nightmare movies. But
Yeah, it kind of was in a way. I can totally
know-
see what you're saying.
Lance is saying in the chat that the movie Toys actually has a subversion of Super Battle Tank played on it, making that absolute connection more apparent.
that's right,
Piggybacking.
they did Super Battle Tank.
Oh damn.
Sarv, I know you're not even at the final level yet, but I don't know if we wanted to go into the outro with the podcast, and I don't know.
Yeah,
what
you know that might be a good time to do that. Actually, one moment. I have to take care of something real quick. I'll be right back.
Alrighty. Oh, also, we should probably ignore.
It's the whole music.
Oh, music.
Thank you. I forgot the melody.
Thank you for
forgot
holding. Oh, sorry.
I'll send you my weight and startup CDs now.
That's one of my favorite thingies ever. He's like, what he's saying? Thank you for holding. Your call is very important to us. Dick butt. Wait, I'm not sure if we're sure. It's we're at the point where it's actually 1:05 a.m. on my end, and I admit I actually have a reason to get up at a semi-decent time tomorrow, so that's kind of why I want to get into the closing segments of. As a matter of fact, well, it's not actually paid work. Actually, it's another thing, which mostly doesn't look good in my resume, but also because I've been tired of being lazy for most of the past year, so I decided to actually put a couple hours volunteering at the library, which
Hey, nice.
is only just like a 15-minute walk away, and seems like just the type of place where I'd be just fine working, and would also serve as a constant reminder that there are so many books that I need to get on reading, so that way I can say that I've read them and that they suck as a result. No, I'm just kidding.
Did they quiz you on the Dewey Decimal System? Because I actually did put in I put in an application at the library once upon a time. And they made you do a test, and I got through it, aced it, but I couldn't tell you what the Dewey Decimal System categories are now.
I think that I'd like to say that 800 to 900 is generally like about authors. Like I know they have its own segments for like religion, I think, but aside from that.
See, I was thinking it was the 800 to 900 was the cattle branding and.
Oh, here we go. And nothing. Quick little wiki look doesn't solve otherwise. From the first zeros: computer science, library information science, and general work. 100 philosophy and psychology. 200 religion. 300 social sciences. 400 language. 500 science. 600 technology. 700 arts. 800 literature. 900 history, geography, and biography. And then, like, I guess they have they're like usually like children's fiction is its own segment. Like, and I guess like comic books and graphic novels are also like, I don't know, would that be considered arts though? Well, I guess it depends on what each library organizes them by. But
what's the Dewey Decimal for pornography?
6969. No, I'm sorry. That's just I suppose Michael Scottish sort of comment I could make there. But actually, I wonder, do they have? No, unfortunately, not yet. Yeah, I'm wondering if the Dewey system should be expanded to include further forms of media research.
I was going to say that would pornography would be covered by the Dewey Decimal System.
Reminds me that there's the instead of the National Public Library, this one bit in Futurama had the National Pubic Library in it. I believe that was the episode with V-Giny, for the record. I guess I should, offhand on that note, wondering what anyone thinks of Futurama once again being canceled. I'm of two minds on that. That I think maybe it could have had another season or two left in it, but on the other hand, I don't want it to get all Simpsons zombie syndrome, and B, I admit season 7 has... it's still good, much better than anything else in Simpsons, but it still feels a little bit limp compared to even the season right before it. Like, not as many memorable moments as stood out. So this could be a blessing in disguise. And it's not like, it's getting axed like Mission Hill did right after its first season, which I'm still mad at after all these years. But, yeah, this is... I guess you can call this a pre-ending interlude. I don't know what else to talk about at this point.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, like, if you look at Family Guy, it was good up until the second season, then it turned to crap.
And then I can't even watch the old episodes anymore, because just so...
Yeah, because of his political crap, but...
I much... Sorry.
I just feel it's not really all that funny in retrospect. I guess it was the humor I liked back when it was relevant, but I've grown up.
What were you saying, Bob?
Sorry.
I haven't watched Family Guy, and I don't even remember when.
Yeah, I think, like, sophomore year of college, which was 2008, was the last time I really ever seriously watched it. Since then, I'm surprised I even watched it up to then, but in this part of the podcast, we just talk about why TV isn't good anymore. Which is relevant because Home Improvement is a TV show.
Yeah, I'm actually really disappointed Home Improvement's not on Netflix.
It's not?
I like
crap.
As far as I can tell, I haven't seen it. They've got Married with Children though, but with I can't watch it though because they eliminated the theme song because of that dirty wop Sinatra's estate. Oops. Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Xerxes isn't here to correct you, and it's all a little late for us. Just trying to let it slip again.
No, I was just gonna say though the Love and Marriage, like they don't have the rights to it, so they have some generic song playing during the opening. It's like
wonk.
Yeah, it's just not the same. I mean, it just kind of kills your drive to see the show.
Yeah, I guess it's also kind of like the reverse of. No, wait. No, why did I want to bring up Yahtzee? It has nothing to do with anything. Never mind. Also,
this has been a very interesting podcast.
Oh my, yes.
Is Narber not going to beat the game?
He can if he wants. I just want to sort of tail end the podcast itself because I kind of like to go to bed within the next hour myself. And also, I'm not sure what else we can say about the game. We gave it a pretty thorough coverage. Unless
Look
there's
at our scope. There's a lot of stuff in the script we didn't go over.
Oh wow. Yeah, actually, if you wanted to get on those, I'll try and cover them.
Let's see. Okay, I'll try and do my best Xerxes impression.
Okay.
Guest, whose decision was it to make this game unfairly difficult and also curse you with infinite continues?
I guess that'd be directed towards Ryusui.
Ryusui, you here?
Yeah, sorry, what was that again?
Oh.
Okay. Whose decision was it to make this game unfairly difficult and also curse you with infinite continues?
Well, infinite continues were my doing, so... As for unfairly difficult, I would probably
So are you
guess...
trying to say that you're God or something?
Wait a minute. Oh, did I actually... Oh, I'm sorry. I typed infinite continues in the script. I meant to say limited.
Right. I'm the one who did the infinite originally. It was limited continues. As for who decided to make the game brutally unfair, I would probably blame someone in marketing, because marketing is the root of all evil.
It's okay. You can say David Crane. I don't think he's listening to this.
Probably marketing bigwigs also wanted to give it a little substantial flavor, not really play testing it, wanting to get it out in a quick schedule.
Actually, Tim Allen probably was, snorting some cocaine, and he thought, yeah, let's make this game, we'll extend the play life, the value for these people. We'll just make this game really not fun to play and really difficult and have all the enemies take 50 shots to kill.
Yeah, I'm sad we can never get that fixed in time.
Oh yeah, it's not just that they take 50 shots to kill, it's that they get mercy invincibility.
And you don't get as much in comparison, I think.
I'm just sad we never had the time to actually fix the enemies in this, too.
Well, that's fine. I meant there's more time, and in fact,
there's more time for more power.
No, I think we got a good idea going on. We should find more bad games and just fix them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's something I'd love to do.
Cool idea for
Hold on, can we even fix Daikatana?
No. Well, you could probably make the levels better. They did release the level editor, but the question is, why would you want to bother?
So you can make Superfly sound like a women's studies professor and
here's the thing. The guy who did the voice for Superfly Johnson went on to do a bit role in Deus Ex, and he sounds like a completely different person almost, because he's not, yeah.
Oh Lord, give me some chicken, Mr. Hero.
Oh God.
Oh Lord.
Oh God, why?
My problem with him was he'd get stuck on stuff in the background, and it's like
I can't leave without my friend Superfly Johnson. But he says that with such a straight face, he's not cracking up at the fact that his name is Superfly Johnson.
Yeah, that was just a really bad. I mean, that was something that deserved a fix. Just to, that if you got to the end of the level or whatever, that you didn't have to have your totally worthless, Secret of Mana level AI idiot people getting caught on stuff in the background. I mean, it was just really, really difficult. But let's see. I'm going down the list here. Snarbu, what superficial factor is worse in this game and why? Graphics or the music?
Music, most definitely, because as we noted earlier, it's just
boring.
different.
It's like it's not even there.
Well, the one thing I will say about the music that is nice is that all of the stages have the Home Improvement leitmotif in there at some point.
Yeah, at least. I didn't even notice in the first level because it's like kind of muted, but it's there somehow. Very drummy.
It's not always in the boss themes, I think. I think that's the one place where it's not normally in, or not normally there.
I'm really disappointed that they didn't. I mean, you know, the title theme, they didn't do too bad of a job. It's just they don't have any like sound effects. Like, actually, that's one thing I'd have to complain about. You know, in this game is they don't have any of the grunts. They don't have the or the the weird at the beginning. It's like, okay, yeah, this is like the Korean knockoff of the Home Improvement theme song. It doesn't have the weird
grunting noises in the background.
I never understood, like, that didn't even sound like a grunt. It was like I just came really hard and I'm, you know, just out of my mind right now, you know, but, yeah, that was one thing this was lacking. I think that it would have, you know, softened the blow of, you know, how difficult this game was if they would have worked some, voice samples. And that was one thing that the SNES had it, you know, going for it, is that you'd have these voice samples and they sounded really good, whereas like on the Genesis versions they would sound kind of like
the intro to Super Metroid. The intro to Super Metroid.
Yeah, that's right. The
I remember the voice samples in Kirby's Avalanche. They were crystal clear.
Kirby's Avalanche.
Yeah, that always impressed me, especially when I think the first time I heard a digitized voice in a Super NES game, it was Jeopardy, and it was like, ruff, ruff.
You know, I'm reminded of that one IRC quote about dudes downloading 15 minutes of Tim Allen grunts to make something a reality.
Did he ever actually do that?
Yeah, he actually had a song, but he couldn't figure out how to get it into the game.
Well, I just got the stupidest idea, like making another one of those bloody UNO and remixes out of those.
Oh god.
Oh god.
Oh no, my
Mostly
cat's
because
crying.
I started thinking of it like, you know, la 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 la.
You mean the Judge Dredd one?
Yeah.
Can we put Home Improvement and Guile's theme together?
Yeah, probably.
Oh my god.
Just how many memes can we jam pack together?
Can we Space Jam remix it?
Oh god.
If anything, though, like the, you know, like all of those grunts and stuff, that would be more of a Resident Gigolo type thing, because it just sounds like, you know, the. Anyway, I gotta bring it in. So
Next question.
Next question, Jojo. If you were to play this game while watching any given episode of Home Improvement, would you automatically grow a thicket of chest hairs? I don't know. Like, there's. I really have no answer to this. Sorry.
I forget if I originally wrote this one or if Xerxes modified it, but it is really a stupid question in retrospect. So
I honestly don't have an answer for that because I'm beyond like the witty and clever level. I'm just kind of like my teeth are numb and.
Me too. You can feel free to move on down.
Sweet. Name 3 games on the SNES worse than this.
Ooh, that is a good question. First, I want to say The Rocketeer. And the reason why I have The Rocketeer in the first place is because I love the movie The Rocketeer. And I'm trying to think. I am stymied trying to think of any other really bad games I had for the system. I want to say...
Pro tip, anything by Ocean.
I do not remember anything by Ocean in my library. I want to say... I'm not sure whether I want to put Claymates on that list because it was a charming game, but I don't remember it being all that good. But at the same time,
it was hard as hell.
Yeah, I did beat it once or twice. I do remember that much. I remember that for some ungodly reason they decided to make the final level a shmup stage where you literally had like 2 hits and then you were dead. You didn't get any of the fun animal forms for that. I remember, in fact, the first time I played the game and I was like, why the heck is this final stage set in space when all this time I've been told this shaman guy is the real villain? I mean, that was just, it's like they felt compelled to hot glue an extra level onto the end for the hay of it. As for another notable one,
Yeah, you still have 2 left.
I
Well, you mentioned the Rocketeers. Oh.
Yeah, I did mention the Rocketeer.
Yeah, but that doesn't
I mean,
count because that's based on the Rocketeer, the seminal classic of
yeah,
the 90s.
but the first stage is. Let's just make this clear. I mean, the first stage is this racing sequence, and if you don't beat the racing sequence, which is pretty much clunky controls, pretty much impossible to do. If you don't beat that racing sequence, you can't get anywhere. I mean, for the longest time, it was pretty much the only part of the game I had access to. And basically the whole game is just this huge genre roulette. I mean, even the final stage, if I recall, has its own little mini brawler type thing set up that is never used anywhere else in the game.
Yeah, you had to fight the Nazi on top of the Zeppelin,
not
and then
quite Nazi. It was a big
save
double,
Betty Page.
Yeah, it was this big double lightning bolt symbol, and of course the Nazi red square white circle background. But since this was Nintendo in the mid '90s, they couldn't actually have the bad guys be Nazis.
So it's kind of like how they molded over like Vandal Savage from that one episode in Justice League where he goes back in time.
They didn't boulderize that much though, because doesn't Hitler appear in that episode?
He does,
they
actually.
just didn't say who he was.
There's actually an episode that actually say the word Nazi, which kind of surprised me.
He's Master D.
It was really funny watching an episode of Rocko's Modern Life after all these years and hearing him refer to Gestapo security guards.
Wow, I don't
That show
remember
got away
that.
with a lot of things it probably shouldn't have, and that's probably
Like
a big reason why it was canceled.
The car impound prison rape.
Oh yeah, that one really surprised me to learn about what I saw, because like that was one of those things that really.
Yeah, I didn't notice that when I was a kid, but you know that was one of those things that it's like, wow.
And I didn't realize until like I was like practically out of high school why they changed the name from Choky Chicken to Chewy Chicken, but
They kind of didn't they
Another
lampshade
show like
that
that
though
was
later
The
in an
Cat.
episode with the whole where he went to hell, and they're like, no, we can't say that.
yeah, they basically the episode Hef in the Handbasket they actually took off the rotation for a long time because I guess it was dancing too much on Fire and Brimstone.
He's got X's for eyes. What does that mean?
You know what really surprised me?
What?
Yeah.
Apparently, Johnny Bravo is not a virgin.
Well,
Like, they throw him into a volcano's virgin sacrifice, and then the volcano were up, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that too.
You know, McPixels does that joke in reverse. There's the game McPixel, which is basically this parody of MacGyver, or rather McGruber, whichever.
Oh, yeah.
Actually plays this gag where you have to stop a volcano erupting, and you have to have McPixel jump into the volcano because it demands a virgin sacrifice. Nothing else will work.
Yeah. So when we have to keep kicking everything in the nuts. Wait a minute. Also, if I may suggest one more SNES game that's really bad, Home Alone 2.
Oh dear.
Also, Sarver is currently fighting Dracula, which is just.
I'm trying to think which version of Dracula he's closest to. The one from the second Game Boy game?
As a matter of fact, that's exactly what I was thinking, with the multi-platforms everywhere.
Damn. Bottomless pit.
Oh, we should try and
Yeah,
get
let's
on
wrap the
rest of this.
podcast up itself, and then we can just
Do a couple more
BS.
questions though. Let's see. I do want to bring up though that this really was a labor of love on Ryusui's part though. Thank you for putting together the More Power Edition and for
Seriously,
actually
thank you
making
so
this
much.
Making it
beatable.
beatable.
You are
Yes.
very welcome. I just wish I had gotten around to getting the other part done, disabling the damage sponginess of the enemies.
That's okay, dude. You can do that later.
Get up there.
I was gonna say, like, I'm sure this is like gonna look great on your resume, but at the same time, like, think about what you have done for humanity. You've made a game that is like this, playable. And I agree with what Xerxes was saying. It's like on the verge of being something special. It's just the problem is that the game gets in the way. And some of these things.
Valley effect. I mean, the closer game gets, the closer work of any kind gets to good, the more glaring its flaws become. The mistakes it makes are like, why the heck would you do this when you got everything else so close to perfect?
And that's one thing I really like. I mean, Bob mentioned about the sprites. I love the sprites in this game. Well, at least for the humans. The monsters and stuff kind of look goofy, but
Do you think they're actually
The game itself is pretty well animated, I have to say.
I was gonna say, like, like the people in the, like, I'm kind of taken aback at like the tool time sequences. There's a lot of really great little details there, and the sprites, the humanoid sprites, are really well animated and they're nice and detailed, and they look like the characters from the show, and it's really well done, and it's kind of a stark contrast with the rest of the game. I mean, it's not like the rest of the game's all that bad. It's just, it
Some
plays
of it
wrong.
is.
Yeah. So,
Makes me wonder if every game out there has like any trace element in them that is good and like can be expanded upon, and like all these games we thought were crap before can get any redemptions. Of course, I don't know if this is a legitimate idea I'm posturing or if it's just a massive how many turds can you polish sort of challenge.
that's the thing. I mean, people don't set out to make a crappy game. I mean, well, I'm sure some people do, but it's not like they went into this game and were like, hey, let's make a really crappy game out of Home Improvement. It's going to sell. I mean, they probably wanted, at some level, they really wanted to make a decent game, but it's just, they made some really bad decisions. So...
Yeah, I would definitely think that nobody would deliberately want to make a game horrible. It's just, road to hell, good intentions, blah, 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 and then executive meddling, and then, like,
well,
failed
think about it like this. I mean, it's kind of like, George Lucas is just a master at messing up his own movies. And, I guess it's one of those questions where, is the fan right? Are the people that are actually, the audience and enjoying it, or, do they have a right to say, look, Mr. Auteur, you screwed this up, would rather have it this way or not? I mean, and this is one of those situations, I think, that, the game that, as it was developed has some glaring flaws, but, it's nice whenever somebody has the ability to fix something like that, or I guess in a similar way, there's people that edit the Star Wars movies to make them not suck again. So, man, I keep seeing these Binford tools, and they're just like really, like, for one thing, how expensive are they? I mean, they're just retarded. Anyway,
they were invented by
The biggest problem I have with this game is that you never ever get to use any of those tools.
I know. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's like
I thought that like they upgrade like your abilities, like the jackhammer and grappling hook, but that's a totally blown opportunity.
Yeah.
If I can...
That's
Screw it. One thing I will say that is actually not too bad about the later worlds, or the final one, is that the stages are actually way more compact and short. They're just densely packed with enemies, which is kind of weird, but I can live with it.
Now, Snarbu, while we ultimately decided against playing it this month, would you like to say a few things about Tech War?
Oh Lord, it's probably worse than this game. I'm not even sure that game is beatable.
Hold on, can we possibly salvage it in any way like we did with Home
No, because we
But
don't
we
have
already-
the source code to it,
Weasel already kind of did with his Fantastic Doom mod, Weasel Presents Terrorists, but
yeah.
as far as fixing the actual game itself, that's gonna take some dedication and elbow grease, to say the least. For now, I'd just stick with Terrorists.
Yeah. Is Wild Weasel actually in the call? He was earlier.
No, I think he bowed out.
Okay.
Not honestly sure where he currently is. I think he said he had to do something, but I can't actually ascertain that.
Okay. No
But-
biggie.
Oh, he hung up on purpose, actually. But, end of the day, kids have to learn about Tech War sooner or later.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like, kids, William Shatner's name is attached to this. How do you feel about that?
Chat But,
So,
yeah.
Tig, are you implying Shatner's pulling a turbo for some reason?
Actually, he did say Shat-tastic on some show he was hosting. I can't even remember.
Oh,
Chat-tastic.
In fact, let me see. If I
It's
can
like he's embraced just how much of a joke his career is at this point.
Yeah, basically, and I honestly don't have a problem with that. I would say it is. Would you say it's kind of like what Adam West has done, also?
Yeah, Adam West has done much the same thing.
Nobody messes with Adam West.
I will say it's one of the very few gags from Family Guy I still like, where his light brights don't spell out his full name, and then he says nobody messes with Adam Wee. But that aside, I think I had something else I wanted to say about tech. Damn it! I was going to say one more thing, but it slipped my mind. Oh yeah. No. Yeah, the thing about, for those who aren't as familiar with it, I'm pretty sure everyone here is by now, but, like, the thing with Tech War is that Starboot proposed the idea that, like, if nobody caught on to our little gag and nobody put it outside the IRC, put in an actual serious vote, then, we were going to troll everyone and just say William Shatner's Tech War is the game of the month. But, no, people actually did take this seriously, and we ended up actually taking Home Improvement more seriously than we thought we would, so things turned out somewhat better than expected that result.
Well, we took it seriously enough to ROM hack it.
Yeah, that as well. That, and then Ryusi actually did smooth the game's rough edges out and actually made it a decent product. So, yeah, this ended up being actually more legit than I thought it would be, and we ended up completely avoiding Tech War, which is probably for the best in retrospect, because...
Oh, it's Tech War, for
But
Christ's sake.
speaking of legitness, the randomizer results we got for May seem like even more of a joke, don't you think?
You know, actually,
should we get...
now would be a good time, I think, to actually sort of just wrap this up, and then we can still BS afterwards, obviously. So, for next month's games, we have ran the randomizer, and we have Trespasser for PC. I'm trying to remember what some of the other ones, but we had Trespasser.
Oh, Jurassic Park Trespasser PC.
We had Madden 95, wasn't it, for the Sega Genesis, or really any of the systems out at the time.
Yep, and the very obscure Car Battler Joe for
for Game Boy Advance. I'm not sure where did Xerxes hear about that game anyway.
I've never heard of it until it just.
I think I read about it in a magazine once.
Yeah, that might be where he heard it.
But
I think
yes,
I might actually have that.
Really? Wow. Was it based on a show or something, or was it completely original property?
I think it was a pretty completely original property. I don't remember much about it though. I mean, the GBA was like the Super NES Mark II in a lot of respects. There was a lot of stuff I remember getting, but I don't remember a lot about.
I thought Car Battler Joe was linked to a series of RPGs about roaming the wasteland in a custom-built car.
Wasn't it like Metal Max?
Metal Saga?
Metal Max, I think was.
Yeah, Metal Max.
Like that.
Perhaps.
Where are those plasma bolts coming from?
The plasma beams, yeah, those are actually unique enemies, and they will respawn until you kill them. and then they become in a slightly more annoying form that's very difficult to kill.
Yeah, it's you're best leaving them alone when you can, but there are a few instances where
you have to shoot them pretty much.
Yeah. Hobson's choice. Fork. Hob.
So anyway, let's see. So we ran the randomizer. Oh, we should mention this month's Tips Master, which is, I'm pretty sure that's Feynman for actually taking the time and beating this game on its own terms, and doing so without any of the improvements and fixes that Ryusui added to the game.
And even putting up a video
that's like
of it. Holy
that's like tantamount to becoming the guy, I take it.
Feynman, you have certainly bested me at my own skill, and you have my admiration.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed he didn't show the ending, so we totally didn't have to watch the whole thing,
Yeah, there's
I still say it was Atlas.
No,
Would you
trust
kindly
me.
pick up all... Whoa, wait, I don't remember this area. What the hell? Did this go somewhere? This is a
Also-
other... What the hell? What?
She's really his daughter from an alternate timeline.
Is that a Bioshock Infinite spoiler?
No.
Okay, good, because I actually am trying not to.
Yeah, actually it is.
Wah, wah.
Oh no!
Also, I guess I should ask the question at the outro. How many listeners do you think we all lost for this little monthly gag? Was it about as abominable as expected, or was it less sucky than you thought it would be?
This game is in a lot of ways just ragingly mediocre. It has those outstanding issues that kind of make it a cut above most boring and terrible licensed games. On the other hand, it's actually pretty decent, and Ryusui has shown me the way via this hack, so...
Let me put it like this. Without the license, this would be not anywhere as interesting as it could have been.
True.
Yeah.
We played this with the license. Let's not even doubt that for a second.
And what JoJo was saying earlier, even with the license, this is wasted potential because there's not a single audio grunt in this.
I'll go on record and say they still should have made an adventure game.
Yeah, that would have probably made more sense in some ways. Or if not an adventure game, then I don't know.
RPG.
Well, I think if they have this platforming shooting sort of thing going on, I think if they had just gone all out and just made this a Contra clone, that would have probably worked pretty damn well.
Dating simulator. You date all sorts of power tools and trading
Dating simulator?
Two-timed the minigame compilation a la WarioWare.
That I could actually get into.
Yeah, that actually seems kind of feasible in a sense. Although there's so many of those terrible licensed minigame collections.
Yeah.
Well, this one would have been amusing because it has Tim Allen.
No one man should have all that tool power.
And should we get into this month's lingering question also?
Yeah, actually, so Ryusui has done a great job on this hack so far, but we are curious if anyone else who has experience might, be able to help him out with some things, or just, I guess, I don't know, actually, maybe poke at it and if Ryusui gets sick out of it, just someone to help continue this in any way possible.
And furthermore, since it was mentioned earlier in the podcast, if anyone can think of any other really bad games that they'd also want to see if anybody could edit them to make it more palpable. Like, for example, I don't think it's a bad game, but I think that Cobra Triangle on the NES is effing unbeatable as it stands. So if anyone could at least give that game infinite continues at the very least.
I thought you beat that game, though, Satanga.
No, it is my greatest shame. Even with the Game Genie, I wasn't able to effing beat it. Nightmares. No, I'm serious. It's as rare can get, I swear. I would say that maybe it was meant more for a high score, but the game does have an actual end to it. Not much of an ending, but it's still there. So...
Sometimes I wonder if they knew that one day people would be emulating game systems and then putting in save states to totally get around all the bullshit that they put into their games.
Well, maybe. I mean, the Game Genie was a thing back then. I guess they recognized that some would utilize its power, if they could do more, maybe hack into the game's code.
Well, apparently trainers were a big part of, pirated Amiga games. That was actually a big part of the thing. You'd usually play one of those really hard Amiga games that no one plays or talks about with a trainer. I think that's what Cal has said anyway, since, him being Australian, he has a little bit more experience with that. As well as some of our other European members as well, I assume.
I actually had an Amiga.
Did you really? Wow.
Really?
I am envious.
Where did you get it?
It was actually belonged to another family member, and then it ended up being mine. I don't know all the details, but basically, I grew up on the original platform version of Lemmings.
Oh, wow.
So I'm guessing it was an
where they bought
A500, not an A1200.
Yeah, in the United States.
This was in the early 90s, I'm pretty sure, and I have no idea where the person in question got it because, yeah, as you just pointed out, as far as I know, the Amiga was mostly a European thing, as far as I
I think
know.
there was an American
Which is-
release of the system, though. I think there was
Yeah.
at
Well,
some
it
point.
is
had the
kind of
500.
funny. Oh, I'm sorry, but I just think it's kind of funny in that the Amiga is an American computer, built by Commodore and all that. But since they utterly failed at marketing the thing here, it got more traction in Europe of all places.
No, I heard they had a bunch of CD32s in Canada, but they never actually sold them.
Huh.
It's interesting.
It's just, I really, really want an Amiga. I just don't want to pay the secondhand prices for them because they're kind of
No.
expensive for such an old.
I've always thought of getting one, but I never have the actual space or the money I'd need for one, so...
Hey, it's like Neo Geo, almost Neo Geo-ish in how much.
Yeah, it's the PC equivalent of a Neo Geo.
It's like, you think Mac users are cultists? You haven't seen the Amigans, boy.
And
These are people who will pay like upwards of $2,000 for an old Amiga 1 whose, real benefit is
1000.
just being able to run Amiga OS 4.
and
Oh, Amiga 1. I'm thinking...
Here's the
Never-
thing about Amiga OS 4. It requires a PowerPC processor, and it is licensed to only run on specific platforms like those Amiga 1s and a few other boards. You cannot just take an old Power Mac and install it on that.
I want one Amiga so I can play Quake 2 and use IRC.
really, if there's any reason why I get an Amiga, primarily just be for the Turkin series. Outside of that, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. I'm sure that
How
there were
about
places.
Exile?
Okay, here's
Oh,
something
yeah.
for you. Here's something
And
that blew
Apidia.
my mind. Here's
Really?
something that blew my mind. Back in the day, most of my Amiga collection came from bargain bins. I knew a couple of stores that carried Amiga software, so basically it was a beggar's choice thing when it came to Amiga software. And one of the things I played was this game called Feud. It was set in a fantasy world, and you played as a wizard whose job it was to take out his evil brother or something like that. Basically, it was kind of like a deathmatch type setup in this fairly big world where you'd explore, you could find ingredients for spells, and the ultimate goal was to take out the other wizard before he could take you out. And now here's the thing that blew my mind years after the fact. The people who developed Feud were the same people who went on to develop Plock.
Ah, so the Pickford brothers.
Yes, the Pickford brothers. It was the
Wow.
So was that when they were part of Z2, or was that actually, were they...
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that the box I had was Mastertronic published things, which probably I'm pretty sure means it was a Euro release or something like that. But
Okay.
I don't know who the if it was credited to a development company, but I probably should boot it up again sometime. Take another look at it. It's kind of an unusual game. It was kind of an interesting, unique concept. And again, it blew my mind to realize that it was created by the people who would go on to create Plock.
They made a bunch of
You know
games,
what I found out?
actually. Let's see.
Apparently Matt Furnace did a ton of music for the Amiga, too.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Amiga and Genesis sound hardware is more or less interchangeable.
Not
Amiga
really, actually. They weren't all that
The
similar.
chip is so much more sophisticated than the Genesis hardware. I'd say it has more in common with the SNES because it's more sample based.
Yeah, it's probably not an accurate statement. The only real thing I could say to support what I said was Mega Turrican. That's probably the exception to the rule. I rescind my statement otherwise.
Well, Mega Turrican was made specifically for the Genesis, I think, and then it was ported to the Amiga as Turrican 3. Believe it or not, I think is how that worked.
So, Ryusui, do you still have that Amiga? I'm wondering if it was actually an NTSC model rather than a PAL model for obvious reasons.
It was probably an NTSC model. I really do not know. technically still have it, but it is been packed away somewhere, and I am fairly certain I probably couldn't get to it now, even if I wanted to. It's a small tragedy.
So it's sort of like how my copies of System Shock 2 and Magic Carpet 2 and like the big box for Trespass and whatnot are buried in Virginia somewhere for the better part of a decade, and I don't even remember.
Pretty much, yeah. Thankfully, on the System Shock 2 front, there is now GOG.com. It's actually kind of funny. I actually got to play System Shock. I actually played System Shock 2 on GOG before I actually played through the BioShock series. And it was really weird experience seeing the evolution of the series. And one thing, for example, one thing was getting used to the controls after each iteration.
For instance, no more inventory system.
No more leaning as well.
No more quick save. That was something that took.
I do have to admit, though, I'm surprised that your brother actually prefers BioShock to System Shock 2.
Well,
like, I'm guessing, I think what he said was that System Shock 2 had a lot of unnecessary frills, I guess, but...
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. In a lot of ways, BioShock is a streamlining of System Shock 2's gameplay, and in a lot of good ways. The only thing I can think of that really strikes me as a problem is the way the auto pickup works for items, and that's mainly because in the original BioShock there was this propensity for things like alcohol or cigarettes that would deplete your health or EVE in addition to...
Yeah, along with money, and if you want to pick anything up, you gotta pick them all up.
Yeah, that's the thing. In some ways, it was a welcome streamline because, I mean, looting an annelid-infested monster human and then picking up the drink cans one at a time and drinking them was, well, being able to automate that kind of thing was a welcome change. But at the same time, sometimes there were things you just didn't want to pick up.
Guys, I really hate to cut into your tangent, but
sorry.
I feel that we should actually end the podcast because I think it's been recording for like 3 hours on end.
Well, I still have to stream this, so we're ending the podcast officially, but I'm going to continue the stream as the thing.
Oh.
Yeah, he said, watch me beat it live, so I assumed he meant that I would take my time. I meant the actual podcast might end, but...
Well, in that case, can I at least head out for the time being, because I'm running out of stuff to say, and...
You're the call host, aren't you?
Oh, I hate to do this too, but I had a long day too, so...
No problem, guys.
I'm gonna head out. Alright.
Alright, later, Jojo. Thanks for joining us.
Take it easy, guys. Alright.
Always good to have you on. Take care, sir. See you around.
Okay, before I forget, however, let's wrap this up. So we've ran the randomizer, we have our tips master, we've even gone over why this game is good and bad. In a nutshell,
I'm sorry, what was the randomizer again?
It was Trespasser for PC
on R Joe in Madden 95.
Yes.
Okay, I remember.
Actually, Starver, did you want to end this when you beat the game? Because I really don't want to rush it if that's the case.
I can, like I said, I can actually end the text or the actual thing, and then we can just BS. Because, well, I meant this is live. I assume people expect us to just get sidetracked for hours on end.
Yeah, and it's getting near 2 a.m. on my end, and actually...
And, really, we're just a group of friends who have fun and discuss things.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
So anyway, that about wraps it up for this month's podcast. Wow, damn. Got my stuff stuck in a really bad spot. Anyway, that's pretty much wraps it up for this month's podcast. If you'd like to follow us, you can do so at HG_101 and GC9X, respectively, at Twitter, or on Twitter. And that pretty much wraps it up. Keeping it real, folks. Also, I'm going to try to keep it real as I try not to lose all the progress I just made and have to start this world. Oh, God. If I have to continue, I am going to be so sad.